Chapter 74. So embarrassing. Yesterday, I was told that my internet connection had been cut off, but today it's still there. No, absolutely not. Liuran was still smiling calmly at this moment. I would rather the entire Li residence be burned to the ground than to act rashly. His smile was strangely gentle, cold, and ruthless. As long as the people are still here, the Li family will still exist. But if the few of you go out, regardless of what happens to the men in black outside, there is one thing that I am certain of. Countless eyes will immediately focus on this place. Once your identities are exposed, or even if it's not exposed, as long as you show yourselves, then the Li family will have a hard time moving forward. Moreover, the rumor that Xiandan is in the Li family will immediately spread like wildfire. When that time comes, the matter will be over. Senior brother, all of you stay in the secret chamber and do not come out. Once the rumor has died down, I will immediately arrange for you to leave the city. If anything happens in the future, I will seek help from Master and Senior brother. Li Yuran smiled lightly. This time, not only will I not stop them, I will also send a few more people for them to kill. I want to see how Senior Duke Jun is going to deal with this. This is an unpardonable crime of rebellion. Even if the courtiers can tolerate it, can the imperial family? Li Yuran's face revealed a rare sneer. Fine. Since that is the case, I will not say anything. Do as you wish. The man in white revealed a dissatisfied expression and nodded his head helplessly. Junior brother, when you have the time, go back and take a look. Master, he is very worried about you. Rest assured, Senior brother. I will. Li Yuran smiled faintly and walked out. At this moment, a Chihua rocket suddenly exploded in midair, bursting into colorful fireworks. It was extremely beautiful. As the fireworks blossomed, all the men in black suddenly retreated. Like a receding tide, they quickly left the battlefield. In the blink of an eye, they jumped over the wall and ran out of the main gate. In a flash, they had already disappeared into the boundless night. Then, the thunderous sound of horse hooves rang out. Thousands of cavalrymen converged into a torrent. Their formation was neat and tidy, and they rushed over with an extremely murderous air. In the blink of an eye, they had gathered at the entrance of Grand Preceptor Li's residence. A series of commands rang out, and the cavalrymen split into two groups in an orderly manner. In an instant, they had surrounded the Li family's residence so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. The door was slammed open with a bang, and Junjian Tian walked in with large strides, his entire body brimming with killing intent. A sky-blue light flickered around his body. It was obvious that he had already activated his own Tian Xianqi. Although the Li family would not dare to touch him with his status, he still had to take precautions. It was better to be safe than sorry. On both sides, two groups of elite soldiers split into two rows and entered in a single file, their swords flashing. All members of the Li family, come out for this duke. An assassin has appeared in the capital. Search the entire city. Grandpa Jun bellowed, his voice reverberating for miles. Ha ha ha, it turns out that Brother Jun has personally come. Your presence brings light to my humble dwelling. Grand Preceptor Li Shang's face was filled with a cordial smile as he walked out from the main hall to welcome Junjian Tian. His steps were quick, as if he was a pair of twins who had been separated for many years during the chaos of war. Junjian Tian's face was stern as he said, Grand Preceptor Li, please discipline your family's servants and relatives. Her Royal Highness, Princess Raimu, was assassinated today. This Jun has a duty to apprehend the disobedient assassin. If there are any accidental injuries, I will not be held responsible. After saying that, he waved his hand. Search. Wait. Li Shang's white beard fluttered as he took a step forward. His gentle and cordial expression suddenly changed. His beard and hair fluttered as he said in a loud voice, Senior Duke Jun, although you are the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Army and a Duke of the Empire, this Grand Preceptor is also a first-grade Imperial officer and a Duke of the Empire. Without the Emperor's personal decree, who would dare to act presumptuously in my Li family's residence? Junjian Tian sneered. There is a faint trace of hysteria in his eyes as he slowly said, Grand Preceptor, are you implying that a first-grade official in the imperial court has the right to harbor assassins? Search for him. Anyone who obstructs the search will be killed on the spot. Suddenly, the hundreds of soldiers behind him swarmed in and rushed into the Li family's residences to search. Li Shang was so angry that his entire body trembled. He roared, "Junjian Tian, you are acting so unscrupulously and overstepping your authority. Do you really want to rebel?" Junjian Tian laughed loudly. Grand Preceptor's words are truly strange. This duke's mission is only to search for the assassin who assassinated Her Royal Highness the Princess. How did I overstep my authority? How unscrupulous! How can I rebel? Grand Preceptor has repeatedly obstructed this duke's search. Could it be that this has something to do with the assassin? Junjian Tian ignored him and waved his hand for the soldiers to hurry up and search. At that moment, a young man dressed in white stood out with a smile. It was none other than the eldest young master, Li Yuran. He respectfully bowed to Junjian Tian and said, "If Senior Duke Jun were to search by imperial decree, the Li family would naturally not dare to disobey. However, without the Emperor's imperial decree, Senior Duke Jun barged into the residence of a first-grade imperial officer and wantonly conducted search. Even if Senior Duke Jun is not afraid of crooked shadows, our Li family still needs to maintain some face. If word of this were spread, it would not look good on anyone, right?" Junjian Tian coldly looked at the refined young man before him. He could not help but think of his own grandson, Emosia. His grandson could have been stronger than Li Yuran, but ended up suffering from such a treacherous plot. Thinking of this, Lingling's rage flared up and she asked, "What do you want?" This junior would like to ask Senior Duke Jun a very simple question. Senior Duke Jun has repeatedly said that he is searching for the assassin in our residence. However, regardless of where Senior Duke got the information that my Li family is harboring the assassin, if we are unable to find the assassin in our Li family, what will Senior Duke do? Li Yuran smiled warmly and took a step forward. "If that is the case, will Senior Duke Jun give my Li family an explanation?" Grandpa Jun laughed loudly. Suddenly, he took a step forward and fiercely slapped Li Yuran's face. A crisp paw sound rang out. Then, he kicked Li Yuran's abdomen, causing him to fall to the ground. Then, Junjian Tian angrily shouted, "When this old man is searching for the assassin, even your grandfather Li Shang does not dare to far in front of this old man. Who do you think you are? You dare to come out here and point your fingers? You want an explanation from this old man? This is an explanation." He spat out a mouthful of spittle. "What a joke. If you're unable to find the assassin, then it naturally means that your Li family is innocent. If you're unable to find the assassin, then you will have to continue searching. What else can you do? I would like to ask your Li family. Every single one of you, from the old to the young, are desperately trying to stop this old man from capturing the assassin. What is the meaning of this? Could it be that your Li family wishes to rebel and is the mastermind behind this plot to assassinate the princess? If the assassin who tried to assassinate the princess were to escape while you were trying to stall for time, how many heads does your Li family have to bear this crime?" These words were directed at Li Shang. It was obvious that the Li Yuran before him did not even have the qualifications to speak to him as an equal. Even if two armies were to face off against each other, there was still a need to consider the difference in status. If one did not have the qualifications, then they would only be courting death. It was not that Li Yuran did not understand this point. However, seeing her grandfather being humiliated in front of her own eyes, coupled with the fact that there were several people in the secret chamber who could not see the light of day, if they were to be discovered, it would be akin to having mud fall into one's pants. Even if it was not shit, it would still be shit. She could only brace herself and come out, hoping that Junjian Tian would be able to rely on his demeanor as the #1 person in the military to block this matter. Who would have thought that Junjian Tian would not only throw away his demeanor, but also his face? One slap and one kick, both quick and ruthless. Although Li Yuran was a genius in martial arts, she was limited by her age. At present, she was only at the initial level of the Gold Xian realm. The gap between her and Grandpa Jun's Tianxian was like that of the heavens and the earth. In addition, she was caught off guard and received a solid slap and a kick. She felt as if her head was going to explode, and she was seeing stars. Although Grandpa June did not utilize his Xian Qi, Li Yuren's slap under the watchful eyes of nearly 1,000 people felt as if it had struck his heart. Chapter 75. Li Yuren silently stood up from the ground. A vicious glint flashed across his eyes. Maintaining his cultured and refined demeanor, he smiled modestly and said, "Senior Duke Jun is right to reprimand this junior was rude. I hope that Senior Duke Jun will not take offense." He continued to smile as he looked at Jun Tian. His smile was sincere and actually contained a strong sense of shame, as if he was very embarrassed by his actions earlier. Jun Tian's eyes widened as he suddenly felt an indescribable pressure. This kid, with his calmness, is definitely not a simple character. He is probably a ruthless character who can kill people. He could not help but sigh in his heart. If Mo Xie is fine, this kid will probably be his greatest opponent in the younger generation. Ling turned around and sneered. The Li family seed is indeed sinister. Grand Preceptor Li Shang's beard trembled in anger. Jun Tian's words were enough to curse 18 generations of the Li family's ancestors. Everyone get out of the way and let him search. If he cannot find the assassin, old man Jun, tomorrow at the Golden Palace, this old man will have a good discussion with you in front of the Emperor. Let's see if you still have the courage to do so. Li Shang waved his hand at Ling, flicked his sleeves, turned around and sat down under a flowering tree. He closed his eyes and remained motionless. Jun Tian waved his hand. Search carefully. Do not miss a single place. Do not miss even the slightest clue. Nearly 1,000 soldiers behind him replied in unison and fiercely rushed in. In an instant, the entire Li family's mansion was thrown into an unprecedented state of chaos. Not far from the Li family's mansion, an ordinary-looking sedan chair was parked. For people stood at the four corners of the sedan chair with indifferent expressions on their faces. The curtains of the sedan chair were slightly lifted, and a pair of deep eyes looked in their direction, carefully listening to the commotion. This person's thin face was slightly squarish, but his two eyebrows slanted out like two azure dragons soaring in the sky. Even if he didn't speak or move, he had an awe-inspiring aura that emanated from him without being angry. After listening for a while, he closed his eyes and muttered. Jun Tian's confrontation with the Li family this time was a bit excessive. The Li family naturally had many secrets related to their own safety that could not be revealed. Once they were revealed, the Li family would most likely be gone. Jun Tian is obviously not willing to give up so easily, but the empire cannot do without the Li family. He frowned as if he had a headache and said softly, "Shadow, if there's any abnormality, you'll have to step forward and resolve this farce." There was no sound from outside, but this person knew that his order had been clearly accepted. He closed his eyes again. His fingers lightly tapped on a small jade tea table beside him. His eyebrows gradually knitted together like two azure dragons. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. Li Shang's eldest grandson, Li Yuren, is indeed a talent, but a very dangerous talent. Jun Tian soldiers searched along the way, overturning all the chests and cabinets. Crashing sounds could be heard everywhere. It seemed that these people were not here to search for the assassins, but purely to cause destruction. Bang! A huge vase was thrown out and smashed into pieces. Grand Preceptor Li Shang's face twitched fiercely. That was the only one in the world. Bang! Bang! Grandpa Jun's face was cold as he watched with his horsewhip in hand. Panting heavily, he shouted, "Search ruthlessly for me." Even though it was such a serious moment, everyone behind him turned their heads and snickered. Search? Can the adjective ruthlessly be used to describe it? Jun Tian's choice of words was clearly not professional. It was more accurate to say smash. Ruthlessly smash. This old man is quite interesting. He's afraid that others won't know that he's deliberately causing trouble. Might as well watch for a while longer. The person in the palanquin could not help but smile. Following the words ruthlessly, the soldiers searched even more forcefully. Nearly 2,000 soldiers rushed into the Li family's residence. It was as if they were attacking an enemy's city during a war. Some fell, and some were smashed. The people of the Li family gathered in the courtyard and watched, their hearts bleeding. That was all money. After watching for a while, the person in the palanquin closed his eyes and said in a low voice, "There shouldn't be any major problems. Let's go back." He then lowered the curtain and leaned back on the soft seat, closing his eyes to rest. That old man, Junjian Tian, had clearly understood his intentions. He only smashed and smashed in conspicuous places, but did not touch any of the Li family's secret areas. It seems that nothing major will happen here. I want to see, after such a ruckus, which aristocratic family in the capital will still dare to casually pick a side. The person in the palanquin smiled. Fighting must be controlled within a small area. If it endangers the country, then today will be a warning. The palanquin rose and left without a sound. Junjian Tian remained motionless. Jun Wui, on the other hand, looked back indifferently after the palanquin left. Reporting to the marshal, there is no trace of the assassin. One soldier after another came to report. Following that, reports came from all directions. None of them had found anything. Junjian Tian became furious and shouted, "Could it be that the assassin flew into the sky? Is he not in the Li family? Let's go take a look elsewhere." He turned around and led the soldiers out. Then, he mounted his horse and galloped in the direction of the Meng family's residence. The Li family members looked at the courtyard that looked like a beggar's nest. They wanted to cry, but had no tears. The imperial examiner Li Shang patted his waist and sat up with difficulty. Li Yuran hurriedly went forward to support him. The grandfather and grandson looked at each other and saw the anger in each other's eyes. They also saw a little bit of luck. "Grandfather, anyone with a discerning eye would be able to tell that those men in black were Junjian Tian's subordinates. Junjian Tian is a thief crying, 'Stop thief,' and imposing a groundless crime. This is no different from rebellion. Since we didn't manage to find the assassin, Grandpa can bring all the officials and report him to the court tomorrow." Li Yuran pondered and said, "Junjian Tian has clearly shown signs of going crazy." He mobilized his troops and broke into the houses of the court officials to search for them. If the Li family's wealth is exchanged for the fall of the Jun family, grandfather, this is still a good deal. On the other hand, if grandfather doesn't make any moves, I'm afraid that we will be suspected of having a guilty conscience." Li Shang frowned and sighed deeply. He then said in a heavy tone, "Yuran, you are talented and intelligent. You are able to foresee the enemy's schemes. You could be called the #1 person in the younger generation. However, you still have some shortcomings. For example, politics. You're still a little too young, and your foresight is also a little lacking." "Politics?" Li Yuran was somewhat puzzled. Junjian Tian's crime is not enough for His Majesty to punish the Jun family? Enough? Not enough. Far from enough. Li Shang's white eyebrows trembled. The anger and helplessness that he had displayed in front of Junjian Tian had disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by endless scheming. It was obvious that his previous cowardice had been feigned. "You still don't understand the importance of Junjian Tian in His Majesty's heart. I'll simply tell you that His Majesty's life has been saved at least 6 times by this old man. If Junjian Tian had any intention of rebelling, or had even the slightest bit of ambition, he would have already ascended to the throne. It is true that the Tian family has no relatives, but they will never truly put those who are absolutely loyal to them to death. This is the fundamental reason why the Jun family has been able to suppress the 3 armies, even though they have no successors. Do you really think that you can topple Junjian Tian based on what you've just done?" Li Shang laughed mischievously. "Do you really think that Junjian Tian is so brainless that he would offend our Li family? Moreover, do you really think that Junjian Tian's actions have offended us to the point of no return?" Li Yuran was very intelligent. She instantly understood a lot. Her complexion changed as she said, "Don't tell me. ***********. Well, Inform our brothers and sisters that we will update them from tomorrow onwards. We will update them at 9 o'clock in the morning and 18 o'clock in the evening. If there are 3 updates, we will update them at noon. There will be an explanation at that time. Haha, to be honest, I have been updating at midnight every day in order to rush up the rankings. My schedule has been completely messed up, and I have been very tired. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your support during this time. It is finally going to be published. It will be pushed out next week. The explosion that everyone is looking forward to will begin on the 1st of May. Feng Ling will fight side by side with everyone until the end of this book. Thank you. Chapter 76. Li Shang smiled sinisterly. If it wasn't for His Majesty's instructions, the Li family would have been littered with corpses. Not a single person would have survived. Junjian Tian's original plan should have been like this. Otherwise, he wouldn't have mobilized the army with such great fanfare. But there must have been a reason for him to change his mind. In the entire Tianxiang kingdom, there is only one person who can make Junjian Tian give up on this idea, and that is His Majesty the Emperor. Oh yes, there is another person, and that is that debauchee Jun Moxie. You just told me that there is a 90% chance that the debauchee is already dead, but I'm afraid that may not be the case. If Jun Moxie is really dead, even with His Majesty's interference, old man Jun may not be willing to let the matter rest. Therefore, Jun Moxie's life should not be in any danger, and this news should have just been received by old man Jun. So today, even old Junjian Tian is helpless. In this matter, we seem to be innocent and unlucky, but I believe that there are people more unfortunate than us. Li Shang smiled. Her Royal Highness was assassinated, and this matter has stung His Majesty's heart, so Junjian Tian has gone mad. His Majesty is using this opportunity to reshuffle the 3 princes. All the families and officials who have been close to any one of the 3 princes will definitely be warned, banished, and punished tonight. As for those in the Imperial Palace, I'm afraid they have already been dealt with. It's a pity that our preparations have been wasted. Junjian Tian's madness this time was unexpected, but it was inevitable. If we had controlled Jun Moxie, that old man would have already gone mad, and His Majesty is taking advantage of this madness. And then, His Majesty will use this opportunity to weaken the Jun family's military power, and then suppress the other families. The one behind old Jun is the Emperor, and the one who is truly brilliant is the Emperor. Do you think he could topple old Jun? Li Ran was somewhat shocked. He had never imagined that these political veterans would think so far ahead. In fact, they had even tried to figure out each other's thoughts. This was especially true for the person who stood at the highest position in the Tianxiang Empire. His Majesty is a man of great talent and strategy. Naturally, he doesn't want his successor to be an incompetent person. So he wants the 3 princes to compete for the top position, but he doesn't want things to get out of hand. So, if things go too far, he will get rid of all of them and start over again. Therefore, although the 3 princes often fought openly and secretly, the real big families in the capital would never rashly get involved. This is the biggest reason. Remember, let bygones be bygones. Before the situation is absolutely clear, don't take sides. Look at tonight. Li Shang pointed at the black smoke floating everywhere in the sky. All those who stood in line in advance are now in the sky. If that's the case, are we just going to forget about what happened today? Li Yuran asked. How can I just let it go like this? Even if our Li family is willing, His Majesty will not. Li Shang slyly smiled. So, we will definitely report to the Emperor tomorrow. That way, His Majesty will have a reason to suppress all the big families and achieve his ultimate goal. If we don't cooperate, it will be very difficult for us in the future. Li Yuran fell into deep thought. He had been smart since he was a child, and was always able to draw inferences about other things. Whether it was civil or military, he was a genius among geniuses. But now that he heard these words, he realized that he was still young after all. In the end, he still lacked political awareness and foresight. Gently stroking the spot on his face where Junjian Tian had slapped him, Li Yuran's eyes turned as cold as a viper's. Junjian Tian, I will never forget this slap of yours in my life. The same chaos was happening in the Meng family. The Meng family was tossed around even more thoroughly than the Li family. Junjian Tian had practically destroyed their house. But even so, Junjian Tian was still very depressed. Because this wasn't his original plan at all, and it wasn't the result he wanted the most. After this incident, the capital would be peaceful for a long time, at least on the surface. I wonder how Mo Xie is doing right now. Is there any hope of recovery? This is really worrying. Junjian Tian let out a long sigh. Mounting his horse, he glanced at the crying Meng family members behind him and urged his horse forward. His complexion was not much better than the Meng family members. Since His Majesty said that Mo Xie is not dead, then this old man will help His Majesty again. It is worth it. But this matter is a bit anticlimactic. This old man's original intention was to kill all these people. Even though I have killed more than half of them, I have not been able to kill the one I wanted to kill the most. At this moment, an anxious voice suddenly rang out. Junjian Tian, you old man. That's enough. Junjian Tian's body trembled, as if he could not believe his ears. He slowly turned around, and his eyes widened. His face suddenly revealed an expression of ecstasy. A skinny and withered old man flew in front of him, carrying a person in his arms. The old man was panting and sweating profusely, but Junjian Tian did not care about him. He floated down from his horse and took the person from the old man's arms. With a trembling voice, he said, Mo Xie. These two came back at the right time. Just when the curtains were about to fall, they came back just in time. Jun Xie looked at the old man in front of him, who was suddenly overjoyed. It was obvious that he had just walked out of despair. The old man hugged him, as if he was hugging the world's most precious treasure. The deep wrinkles on his face contained deep concern. The ecstasy of regaining something that was lost caused his fingers to tremble. His old eyes were red with excitement. Jun Xie's heart trembled violently. This was a man who commanded millions of troops, a tough man who had returned from hundreds of battles on the bloody battlefield. The moment he saw that his grandson was still alive, he was suddenly overjoyed. It made him look like a frail old man in his twilight years. That deep affection and kinship. At this moment, Jun Xie actually felt a sour feeling from the bottom of his heart. This feeling was very warm, very comfortable, and there was also a feeling of his nose turning sour. Jun Xie suddenly felt that his throat was a little blocked, and his nostrils seemed to be unable to breathe. He had a feeling of wanting to cry. Was this the kinship that he had dreamed of? In both past and present lives, who had cared about him so much? In both past and present lives, who could mobilize an entire country's army for him? In both past and present lives, who had been so desperate for him? Who had been in such despair for him? Who had been so overjoyed for him? Who had been so disregarded his reputation, his life, his family for him? Looking at the old man in front of him, Jun Xie did not doubt that this old man could completely pierce a hole in the sky for him, because he was his only hope. His only hope. Grandpa. Jun Xie's nose turned sour, and these two words blurted out. Ever since he came to this world, this was the first time he was willing to call out this form of address from the bottom of his heart. In both his past and present lives, this was the first time. Yes, this is my grandpa. Not only Jun Moxie's grandpa, but also my grandpa. He is my grandpa, Jun Xie's grandpa. At the side, Jun Wui's crippled body floated down from the horse and sat on the cold ground. Looking at Jun Xie, his eyes were full of gratification and surprise, and satisfaction. In his pair of tiger-like eyes, there were crystal-clear tears, but he secretly turned his head and let them fall. Then, he turned back and smiled gently. This is my family. Should I still resist? No. At this moment, Jun Xie suddenly accepted this body and this family. He accepted this world, whether it was his mind or his heart, for this old man in front of him, for this family. From now on, I am Jun Mo Xie. I am a member of the Jun family. Tianxiang country, Tianxiang city, Jun family. This is my family. Grandpa Jun was so moved that tears almost flowed down his face. Although his grandson looked like he was on his last breath, he was still alive. Moreover, his injuries did not seem as serious as the rumors said. God bless me. As long as he is not dead. As long as he is not dead, everything is fine. The joy of regaining what he had lost caused the old man's eyes to become moist. His body trembled slightly, on the verge of collapsing. This night had been torturous. Starting from tomorrow, we will update from 9 to 6. Update until further notice. Try not to update in the wee hours or in the middle of the night. Everyone should get a good night's sleep and keep their body strong. Haha. Chapter 77. In the imperial court the next day, the disputes between the various parties were even more intense than the farmer's market. After the customary greetings to His Majesty, there was a moment of silence, as if waiting for the rain to come. This was not surprising. Before the storm, there would always be a suffocating silence. His Majesty, the Emperor, looked at the dozens of empty seats and the tall pile of memorials to impeach Jun Tian. He could not help but feel somewhat startled. Although this was within his expectations, it was still very unexpected. Isn't this too much? Although he had received the news last night and was furious, it was only a few names on a piece of paper. Looking at it now, almost half of the imperial court was empty. This feeling was too direct. For example, let's say a student is in a class with 100 students. At night, when he heard that 30 students had dropped out or transferred schools, he would not feel anything. But the next day, when he was faced with an empty classroom, this ratio was not much different from the current imperial court of Tianxiang. Last night, with the assassination of the princess and Grandpa Jun as the starting point, Tianxiang City was filled with flames of war and murderous intent. More than 10 high-ranking officials of the imperial court were beheaded. Among these people, there were many who claimed to be enemies with the Jun family. Apart from this characteristic, there was another common point. These people had already sided with one of the 3 princes. However, everyone was well aware of this common point, so they would not say it out loud. Speaking nonsense at this critical juncture was no different from courting death. Among those who were killed last night, there were a total of 12 people who were qualified to stand here. Unbiased, they belonged to the 3 princes' camps, with 4 people from each faction. Among them, there was an assistant minister from the Ministry of Justice, 2 assistant ministers from the Ministry of Personnel, 1 deacon, 3 officials from the Ministry of Rights, 1 official from the Ministry of Revenue, 3 imperial censors, and 2 grand scholars. And these were only those who could be seen in front of them. How many more could not be seen? The death of all these people at once could be said to be a great shock to the imperial court. It could even be said to be in danger of shaking the foundation of the country. However, all of this was under the operation of a certain expert. Although this expert was currently so angry that his eyes were blue, there were also some ministers who had good eyesight, good memories, and were well informed. They noticed, intentionally or unintentionally, that there seemed to be quite a number of unfamiliar faces in the palace this time. Most of the familiar or even very familiar faces had disappeared, such as the leader of the armed guards, Morong Qianjun. It could be said that he had been promoted 3 times in a day, and the speed at which he rose through the ranks was extremely rare. However, this extremely rare rising star of the Morong clan had now disappeared. It seemed that the blood in the palace was no less than the outside world. Many people began to feel uneasy. What happened last night? Why are there so many people missing today? Who can tell me? His Majesty was an expert in the Politburo. He closed his eyes and glared at Jun Tian, who was resting with his eyes closed. Old Master Jun was very tired last night. It could be seen from his face. Otherwise, how could he be like this in the imperial court? He was just short of snoring. His Majesty's words, which clearly showed that he was ignorant, opened the curtains to the attack in the imperial court. Suddenly, a large number of people knelt down in the main hall. Your Majesty, you must uphold justice for us. A large group of ministers had tears in their eyes. They kowtowed as if they were pounding garlic. Ministers, if you have something to say, please speak in detail. The emperor frowned, a puzzled look on his face. As soon as these words came out, dozens of ministers immediately opened fire at Old Master Jun Tian. Some accused him of disregarding the military laws of the empire and mobilizing the troops for his own selfish reasons. Some accused him of disregarding the laws of the empire and disregarding the dignity of the royal family. Some accused him of breaking into the residences of the ministers and allowing his subordinates to smash things. Some even accused him of being lawless and guilty of the most heinous crimes. Some even accused him of having an army to protect himself and planning to rebel. In short, there were a whole series of accusations. There were at least 30 to 40 accusations, and all of them were irrefutable and true. Later on, some even suggested that Jun Tian should be removed from his position and investigated. He should be executed by 1,000 cuts. His entire family should be beheaded and his 9 generations should be exterminated. Everyone's faces were flushed red with indignation. In the end, it reached a point where without killing Jun Tian, we will not be able to cleanse the emperor's side. Without killing Jun Tian, we will not be able to appease the people's anger. Jun Tian stood with his head raised. His eyes were slightly closed as he looked at the performance of the ministers. He was worried about his grandson's injuries. He was thinking about how to ask the emperor to bring the best imperial physicians home. Jun Tian, old man, what else do you have to say for yourself? His Majesty the Emperor's voice was very strict. It seemed as if he was about to explode in anger. Your Majesty, please allow me to report. Yesterday, this old official heard that the princess was assassinated on the main road outside the imperial palace. Although the princess was blessed with great fortune and did not suffer any injuries, the assassins were so deranged and desecrated the imperial family's dignity. This old official was truly furious. I also heard that the assassins may have made a follow-up move. Moreover, they may have targeted the members of the imperial family and the imperial court. This old official was afraid that any delay would result in a disaster. Therefore, I did not have the time to report to your Majesty. This old official has indeed made a rash mistake. Your Majesty, please investigate this matter and punish me. The emperor's mouth twitched. He forcefully endured it. Old man, you've already said it so clearly. How am I supposed to investigate this matter? You make yourself sound so righteous. If I were to punish you, wouldn't I be an incapable emperor? How do you expect me to continue? Continue. His Majesty the Emperor frowned, seemingly displeased. If I don't continue, I really don't know how to continue. Yes, this old official was worried about this matter. Without reporting to your Majesty, I woke up in the middle of the night. I did not even have time to change my attire before rushing to the drill grounds. Although I was able to mobilize the troops quickly, the assassins came prepared. In an instant, the city was thrown into chaos. This old official bravely took the lead and charged forward. Bathed in blood, I fought bravely against the countless assassins. Finally, I managed to contain the disaster and even killed all the assassins. The assassins numbered in the hundreds. Their corpses were hung on the city gates for public display. However, this old official did not dare to claim credit for it. Although this old official did everything he could, there were still dozens of officials who were killed by the assassins before they could wait for this old official's rescue. This was all because this old official's actions were too slow, resulting in such a tragedy. This old official is willing to accept this crime of negligence. Grandpa Jun let out a long sigh. His voice was filled with sorrow. Those were the pillars of our Tianxiang kingdom. Rubbing his eyes, he appeared to be sighing. However, he was actually feeling sleepy. Hearing Grandpa Jun's words, all the ministers in the hall looked at each other in dismay. What? Accept the crime of negligence? Accept your mother's head? Look at what you're saying. You are the great minister who saved the entire Tianxiang kingdom. You acted decisively and turned the tide. You were the pillar that held up the country. Moreover, you protected the dignity of the imperial family's most loyal minister. If I don't reward you fiercely, you will feel that you have suffered a loss. You still want to accept the crime? Besides, who here doesn't know that those men in black yesterday were from your Jun family? Assassins? What a joke. What do you mean by inverting black and white? What do you mean by confusing right and wrong? That's it. I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen such a shameless person. To think that killing people is like catching thieves. To think that confiscating property is an achievement. This is simply an otherworldly realm. To look up to a great mountain. As for the group of unjustly dead people that were hung on the city gates for public display, if the head of the Ministry of Justice's prison were to identify them, he would definitely find that all of them looked very familiar. They were all prisoners on death row. However, they had been executed by you, Marshal June. In advance, when I went out for breakfast this morning, a tragic incident occurred. A young lady saw me on streets. She was riding her bicycle when she suddenly fell down. This made me feel very apologetic. I was too handsome. The young lady was entranced just looking at me. In the future, I will try my best not to go on the streets. I will write this as proof. Chapter 78. The ministers looked at him with disdain and prepared to launch another attack. Grandpa June's self-justifying argument was simply not something that could be refuted. Grandpa June was still a military general after all. The amount of knowledge in his stomach was limited. To be able to come up with a self-justifying argument was already difficult enough. To think that he would be able to come up with a flawless excuse was simply a pipe dream. Unexpectedly, an old man with white hair and beard took a heavy step forward. This old man was tall and sturdy. Standing together with Junjan Tian, they resembled two majestic mountains. His cheeks were bursting out like a leopard's beard. His face was ferocious, and his body was filled with savagery. This was Old Man Dugu, second only to Junjan Tian in the military. The capital's #1 crocodile, Dugu Zongheng. Tian Xiang Kingdom's #1 barbarian. #1 ruffian. #1 troublemaker. #1 family's leader. He was thick-skinned enough to be called a grandmaster. He treated ignorance as knowledge and used a broadsword to reason. All the civil and military officials in the imperial court were afraid of him. Even the current emperor could not do anything to him. When he stepped forward, everyone could not help but mutter in their hearts. Didn't he not attend court for several years? Why is he here today? Picking such a sensitive period, this old man actually appeared here. It was a little unusual. Dugu Zongheng's round eyes widened like a bear in the forest. He cupped his fists and spoke in a rough voice. Your Majesty, the princess and all the court officials were assassinated. This is indeed a major event that shakes the stability of the country. Thanks to Old Man June, Junjan Tian's prompt decision, this calamity was averted. This old man believes that Old Man June's actions were not wrong. Not only was he not at fault, he was also meritorious. A great meritorious deed. A skinny old man with a goatee sneered. Such a traitor who brought disaster to the country and the people, causing chaos in the court. If this is considered meritorious, then wouldn't the people of the world despise him? This man with a goatee was the third most important person in the Meng family, Meng Yufang. Last night, his house was the most devastated. Not even half a roof tile could be found intact. As a high-ranking official of the imperial court, he brought his family to spend the night in the luxurious and prosperous capital. He was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. Now that he saw the two military bigwigs distorting the truth in front of everyone, he couldn't take it anymore and jumped out. Dugu Zongheng was furious. He turned around and fiercely glared at Meng Yufang. He opened his mouth wide, exposing his yellow front teeth. His voice shook the roof tiles. F***CK, your grandmother. You sour dog shit. Are you saying that I'm wrong? Huh. As soon as he got angry, his hair and beard stood up even straighter. He opened his mouth wide, as if he wanted to swallow this thin and withered goatee in one gulp. He looked extremely ferocious. Next to him, General Dugawudi immediately jumped out and shouted, Meng Yufang, what do you mean by this? My father is talking to His Majesty. How can an old brat like you interrupt? He stretched out his large hand, wanting to grab his neck and lift him up. All the bigwigs raised their eyebrows. This pair of father and son is really unrivaled. They're actually playing hoodlums in the Golden Palace Hall. His Majesty the Emperor was the instigator of this show. He couldn't help but be dumbfounded at this moment. Enough! His Majesty the Emperor shouted angrily and stood up in a violent rage. A bunch of civil and military officials are using filthy language in the Golden Palace Hall. Moreover, they're even fighting. Are they shrews cursing the streets? The emperor's anger immediately silenced everyone. Apart from the Jun family, Dugu family, Li family, Meng family, Song family, Tang family, and Murong family, everyone else, regardless of their rank, immediately knelt down and said in unison, "We have sinned. We are willing to receive punishment from Your Majesty." Junjian Tian's original intention was to capture the assassins. However, he handled the matter improperly and indeed caused chaos in the capital. He will be fined 1 year's salary and will be ordered to spend 3 months in seclusion. However, because of his meritorious service in capturing and killing the assassins, he will be rewarded with 1,000 taels of gold and 1,000-year-old ginseng. Dugu Zongheng will temporarily be in charge of the military affairs. In addition, your families did not distinguish between right and wrong and only cared about your own losses. You'll all be demoted by 1 rank. In order to avoid chaos, your family's military authority will be returned to the military for a year. After a year, you'll be punished. 1 year's salary forfeited, half a month in seclusion, and 1,000 taels of gold and 1,000-year-old ginseng. For Grandpa Jun, could this still be considered a punishment? This was simply a public reward and a public holiday. Only the sentence Dugu Zongheng will temporarily be in charge of the military affairs seemed to have some other meaning. However, it was also very unreliable. All the ministers stole glances at the father and son duo of the Dugu family. Everyone thought, if this is the case, then it would be better to let that old man, Junjian Tian, continue to be in charge. This father and son duo of the Dugu family are much more unreasonable than Junjian Tian. At the very least, Grandpa Jun is quite reasonable in normal times. However, this father and son duo of the Dugu family have never been reasonable. How could their family's private army fall into the hands of this father and son duo? How many will come back? For a moment, almost everyone was cursing Meng Yufeng in their hearts. Dugu Zongheng was the mastermind behind His Majesty's actions, yet you still interfered. If this isn't overestimating your own capabilities, then what is it? It's fine if you're the unlucky one, but you're dragging us down with you. Who the hell are you? Almost everyone had a dazed expression on their faces. Regardless of whether it was an act or not, at least on the surface, everyone looked very real. Standing in the imperial court, if one didn't have a few tricks up their sleeves, it would be very difficult for them to stay in the imperial court for long. Only a dozen or so people still had their heads lowered in anger. Those who felt wronged were truly angry and unwilling. However, these people were immediately remembered by all the big shots. People who can't even understand this little bit of limelight are destined to be useless. When they return, they must teach their own sons and nephews to keep their distance from these people. Otherwise, who knows when they will be dragged into the water? Your Majesty and the others are the pillars of the country. To actually act like this in the Golden Hall, we are very disappointed, incomparably disappointed. His Majesty the Emperor was very angry, unable to restrain his anger. After a series of announcements, he said in a heavy tone, "This matter is decided. There is no need for anyone to say anything." Court dismissed. The Minister of Rights, Sun Chenghe, hastily shouted, "Your Majesty, please stay." This person was Fatty Tang's father-in-law. All the old people looked at him with disdain. Didn't you see that His Majesty was in a hurry to return to the palace to experience the pleasure he had just experienced? To be able to benefit from both sides, to rule over the world, to play with people, to control them, to suppress all the families in the capital, and to bring peace to the entire capital. What a pleasure it was. Why did you choose to delay His Majesty at this juncture? Have you thought it through? You're really stupid. What else do you want? His Majesty the Emperor was obviously very angry. He was pretending to be angry at first, but once he was delayed, the fake also had the tendency to evolve into the real one. Your Majesty, according to our court's tradition, today is the annual Golden Autumn Festival. So regarding the matter of the Golden Scholar Banquet, should it be? This Minister of Rights was obviously lacking a brain. It was not easy to be stupid. All the officials in the imperial court sighed inwardly. What kind of situation was this? Every family was mourning. Who was in the mood to care about the golden scholar banquet? You brat, you're basically Stupid's grandfather. Old fool. You have to be careful in the future. Don't get along with this idiot. Maybe you'll fall in his hands one day. As expected, His Majesty flew into a rage. He said in a heavy tone, "Golden Scholar Banquet. We're in troubled times right now." What Golden Scholar Banquet? If my memory serves me right, the two ministers that I personally appointed to be in charge of the Scholarly Scholar Autumn Banquet are already on the list of those who were killed by the assassins. After saying this, he used his finger to heavily point at the list on the table in front of him. Then, he swung his sleeves and left with a face full of rage. No one saw that after His Majesty turned around, he grinned. It seemed that he was very happy. Indeed, no one saw it. But the old officials were secretly happy. As expected, they didn't get out of their own scheme. After His Majesty the Emperor left, all the people who were kneeling on the ground patted their knees and stood up. The few big shots exchanged glances with each other. Everyone had a look of as expected in their eyes. Li Shang snorted and glanced at Jun Tian. He put on a fake smile and said, "Congratulations, Lao Jun. Is your grandson well?" Li Shang had deliberately brought up Jun Tian's sad matter. Even if he couldn't topple Jun Tian this time, he could still make this old man angry. At the very least, he could make him feel disgusted. However, Jun Tian was immediately alerted by Li Shang's words. He didn't have the time to pay attention to Li Shang. Instead, he spread his feet and rushed in the direction that His Majesty had left. Your Majesty, I need to borrow that Imperial Physician Immortal. It's urgent." All the big shots staggered. "It's hard to understand. There's really such a thing. I'm speaking the truth. Why are you all attacking me? Could it be that you're jealous of my good looks? But this is also pardonable. Wahaha, being handsome is like this." Chapter 79. Dugu Zongheng squinted his eyes in disdain. "Look at this old man. His grandson is just injured, yet he's so nervous. He doesn't have the demeanor of a great general. I despise him for being ranked below such a commoner." Dugu Wudi grinned and nodded his head like a chicken pecking at rice. Yes, I despise him to the extreme. Heaven and earth mourn." All the ministers shook their heads in disdain. You Dugu family members would shout to the heavens even if you lost a piece of skin. Yet, you're here to despise Jun Tian. You're truly shameless. However, Dugu Zongheng's words were very convincing. I reckon that he was the one who helped him think it through. Did he think it through for a long time? This was a shocking piece of news. Could it be that the military is at odds with each other? Thinking of this, all the old foxes muttered in their hearts. Dugu Zongheng was very happy to see his son cooperate with him. Stroking his beard, he said, "My family is still the best. Each family has more than 10 people, and each one is full of vigor. Unlike the Jun family, which only has one person." Dugu Wudi nodded his head like a chicken pecking at rice. That's right. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines. Just one sentence, and you've revealed it again? Each family has more than 10 people? Do you think that your wife is a sow? Truly unbearably vulgar. Besides, your 3 sons have nearly 20 wives. You only have 10 grandchildren, and you still have the nerve to brag. Ignoring the father and son who were boasting and praising each other, they shook their heads and walked out to go home. Let's just treat the events of the past 2 days as a wonderful farce. If only I knew it would be like this, sigh. Not long after, the palace guard saw Grandpa Jun proudly leading an old man with white hair and beard out of the palace with a medicine box in his hand. Jun Tian was riding a horse. Surprisingly, he had a sedan chair with him. It seems that Grandpa Jun had even prepared a palanquin for the imperial physician before entering the palace. This was truly a meticulous and thorough plan. What is called an expert? This is called an expert. Jun Moxie and Jun Dashao lay on the bed, trying their best to look like they were dying, but in fact they were already enjoying themselves. The little lowly Ku-air carefully served him, scooping spoonful after spoonful of crystal sugar bird's nest porridge, ginseng lotus seed soup, 8 treasure hibiscus soup. In short, it was a very nutritious food that could be eaten. He ate them all with gusto. The only thing that made him unhappy was that the old man had also brought over a lot of 6th level mystical beast blood. It was said that this was also a rare, nutritious food. However, Jun Moxie would pinch his nose and gulp it down every time, or pour into the bucket beside the bed when he had the time. It tasted terrible. I'm not a barbarian. Is there a need for you to feed me raw blood? How unhygienic is that? Aren't you afraid of having a stomachache? Of course, this was not the only thing that made him feel good. The key was that after this injury, Jun Moxie discovered that the Hongjun Pagoda in his mind was constantly rotating at a high speed. The white fog of spiritual energy coming out from it was becoming denser and denser, scouring the meridians in his body over and over again. Especially the injured areas, they became the focus of attention. In less than a day and a night, the sword wound his body had already healed up. With a few coughs, he coughed out a few thick black blood clots. The heaviness in his chest had also lessened by a lot. The sword wound on his thigh looked very serious. After all, it was almost transparent. However, under the continuous nourishment of the spiritual energy, he could no longer feel the pain. Only the waves of numbness and itchiness throughout his body made Jun Moxie feel somewhat uncomfortable. However, it was also somewhat comfortable. As the saying goes, pain and happiness. Not only that, because of this injury, the Hongjun Pagoda continued to pour out spiritual energy. It seemed as if it would not stop until the scabs on Jun Moxie's body fell off. Of course, Jun Moxie would not let go of such a good opportunity to cultivate. He straightforwardly activated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune and guided the spiritual energy through his meridians. As soon as he activated the art, he immediately discovered something different. The spiritual energy seemed to condense and collide in his meridians. After the blockage caused by the sword wound a few times, it suddenly cleared up. At a speed that was almost visible to the naked eye, he could feel the airflow in his meridians expanding and becoming thicker bit by bit. If it was in the past, the Hongjun Pagoda would have stopped the output of spiritual energy a long time ago. However, this time, it did not have any intention of stopping. Jun Moxie was naturally happy. He simply gave up on the treatment of the sword wound and focused on guiding the spiritual energy to strengthen the airflow in his meridians. Jun Moxie suddenly felt that his behavior was similar to a scam. The other party was helping him to treat his injury out of goodwill, but he was using this opportunity to improve himself. It was like an unscrupulous businessman using the kindness of people to make huge profits. However, I'd rather do this kind of scam a few more times. I've already become addicted to scamming people. It would be a waste not to scam people. Jun Moxie shouted in his heart. He grasped the speed of the scam even more tightly. Otherwise, what would he do if the spiritual energy fell back to its original state after his injury was healed? He was already used to such a high quality of spiritual energy. If he were to fall back to his original state, all he could do was cry. Was he supposed to kill himself again in exchange for this kind of cultivation environment? It was a pity that the output of spiritual energy would still more or less heal the injured parts. No matter how slow it was still in the process of recovery. When he felt the sword wound on his thigh, giving off a numbing sensation, the speed of the spiritual energy in the Hongjun Pagoda finally slowed down. After maintaining this for a while, it finally slowed down and his sea of consciousness returned to a state of silence. Jun Moxie was startled. He finally woke up. He sighed in his heart. It seems that I haven't enjoyed enough. This kind of cultivation speed is really too fascinating. Under his inner vision, he could see a transparent stream of energy slowly flowing through his meridians. Compared to before he was injured, it had actually doubled in this short period of one night. According to the standards of this world's Xian Qi, it was at least a level 8 Xian Qi cultivation. Moreover, it was very pure. In this world where people below level 9 were ants, even the purest 8th level Xian Qi was not worth mentioning in the forest of silver Xian and gold Xian experts. However, one should not think that Jun Moxie's cultivation speed was slow. It had only been 1.5 months since he came to this world. And in this 1.5 months, his original 3rd level Xianqi had risen to 8th level. This kind of cultivation speed, even those old geezers of the supreme divine Xian realm would be shocked to the point that their old teeth would fall off. If this world had an anatomical research institute, once they found out about Jun Moxie's cultivation speed, it would be strange if they didn't cut him into 8 pieces for research. Jun Moxie heaved a sigh of relief. He suddenly felt that his injury this time was really King worth it. He even pondered if he should cut himself once or twice every once in a while. A guard came in and reported, young Master Tang is here to see you." Jun Moxie replied with a no. Then, he seemed to have thought of something. He nonchalantly stuffed a cloth bag beside his pillow into the quilt. Then he said in a weak voice, "Go and invite young Master Tang in." Following a series of heavy footsteps, Fatty Tang panted as he walked into Jun Moxie's room with difficulty. The large bedroom seemed to have suddenly become narrow. "Third young master, you scared me to death." Tang Yuan's face was full of shock. "I heard that you went to see the late emperor and cried for half the night. Say, if we brothers were to be separated forever, how am I supposed to live?" Jun Moxie looked at Fatty weakly. He really wanted to jump up and kick him. But now that he had to pretend to be seriously injured, he had to let him off for a while. But the look in his eyes was so obvious that he wanted to devour someone. "I've changed. I don't say that I'm handsome anymore, even though I'm really handsome." But in one day and one night, the video was played 300 or 400 times. Isn't this too exaggerated? Chapter 80. Jun Moxie looked at Fatty weakly. He really wanted to jump up and give him a kick. However, he had to pretend to be seriously injured, so he could only spare him for now. However, his gaze was so blatant that he wanted to devour someone. "Fortunately, brother, you didn't die. Otherwise, I would be too lonely in the future. Without you, I really don't know what to do." Fatty Tang wiped his sweat and took the cup of tea from Ku-er's hand. He took a sip and then turned his head and shouted, "Come on, hurry up and bring the gift from the Tang family for Jun Sun Shao." Jun Mo looked at the door with interest. He really didn't know that this dear friend actually needed to carry his gift. What kind of gift is it? 2 men carried 2 big boxes and came in, huffing and puffing. Suddenly, Jun Moxie's bedroom was completely occupied by Tang Yuan and the 2 big boxes. Even Ku-er had no place to hide. She had to curl up her legs and squat on the chair. Tang Yuan waved them out. He smiled and opened the wooden boxes mysteriously, as if he was presenting a treasure. He sneakily peeked at Jun Moxie and then moved away. Jun Moxie almost fainted when he saw what was inside. There were boxes after boxes, bottles after bottles, packets after packets. The packaging was exquisite, and the smell of medicine assailed his nostrils. One look, and one could tell that it was expensive. Jun Moxie was very suspicious. Did this fatty search all the medicine shops in the city? If an ordinary person was injured, these medicines would be very useful and practical. Some of them might not even be bought with money. However, the problem was, Jun Moxie was different from others. He didn't need these things at all. To Jun Moxie, these things were equivalent to a huge pile of rubbish. At the very least, it was of little value. After groaning, Jun Moxie said weakly, "Fatty, it must have been hard on you. The medicine you've brought is enough for me to live until I'm 100 years old, even if I get injured 7 or 8 times a day. You're not here to visit me. You're here to curse me to get injured a few more times." Tang Yuan slammed the wooden chest shut and proudly said, "Third young master, what do you think of my methods? All the medicines in the Tianxiang city, even if they are of the same grade, are all in this box." Then, he mysteriously moved closer to Jun Mo's ear and whispered, "Third young master, I've spent a lot of effort to get my hands on the bottom layer. It's a treasure that can only be found by chance, but not by searching for it. You have to hide it carefully." "What?" Jun Moxie was slightly interested. He raised his eyebrows and asked. Stop. Jun Moxie felt a headache coming on. What kind of strange and messy things are these? What's 100 caddies? Please spare my life, don't disgust me. June Moxie felt a headache coming on. Hurry up and take it away. If Grandpa sees this, don't harm me. What are you afraid of? Any man would like this stuff. I reckon that old Master June also has it. Old Master June is not young anymore. Without these things, even if he still has his heroic spirit, he may not. Ha! Tang Yuan laughed recklessly. Suddenly, what do you mean I also have it? A heavy voice rang out. Jun Zhan Tian strode to the door and looked at Tang Yuan with a puzzled expression. Then, he looked at the crowded bedroom. What's going on? What did you say just now? Why is my luck so bad? Tang Yuan was dumbstruck. Large beads of sweat started to form on his forehead. His eyeballs started to spin around, and his fat body started to soak in a pool of sweat. If the old man had heard what he had said just now. What is this pile of things? Grandpa June was somewhat angry. It's a mess. Hurry up and clear it away. Tang Yuan hurriedly stood up and nodded his head like a chicken pecking rice. Yes, I will clear it away immediately. It's just some ordinary medicinal ingredients, nothing special. The moment he spoke, Grandpa June immediately reacted. Fatty, what did you say just now? I also have it. Tang Yuan's facial features squeezed together in a split second. His complexion turned from white to red, and then from red to green. His chubby cheeks couldn't stop trembling, and his two thighs also showed signs of cramping. Fatty was saying that you still have the heroic spirit of His Majesty. He also said that you also have the heroic spirit of His Majesty. However, he felt that it was a taboo and did not dare to say it again. June Moxie quickly tried to smooth things over. Looking at Fatty's pitiful appearance, if Grandpa June were to say another word, he would probably be paralyzed with fear. What is so taboo about that? Is it worth being scared to this extent? This old man still has the heroic spirit of His Majesty. This is the truth. Grandpa June looked at Tang Yuan with disdain and lectured him. In the future, if you have nothing to do, don't always drag our Mo-sia to those shady places. He has learned bad things from you in the past. Tang Yuan was stunned. Grandpa, how can you invert right and wrong? It was clearly me who had learned bad things from your grandson, Grandpa June snorted. In the old man's heart, his grandson was naturally good and well-behaved. The reason why he was so disappointing in the past was mainly because he had learned bad things from his bad friends. With a wave of his hand, a few guards came in and carried the 2 boxes out. Tang Yuan became anxious. What about the second box? June Moxie was also sweating profusely. Could it be that the second box was even worse than the first? That would really be the death of me. Grandpa June waved his hand and ordered all the boxes to be sent to June Moxie's small warehouse. Kuer also followed. Only then did the 2 of them heave a sigh of relief and exhaled at the same time. A white-haired, white-bearded, white-robed old man walked in. He had a kind countenance and a face full of calmness. Tang Yuan was shocked. He stood up respectfully and greeted. Mr. Fong. This Mr. Fong was the head of the imperial physicians, Fong Huisheng. In Tianxiang City, he had a resounding nickname, Fong Busi. This meant that no matter how serious one's injuries were, as long as imperial physician Fong extended his hand, one would definitely not die. Even though this was an exaggeration, Fong Huisheng's medical skills were unquestionable. Even if Hua Tuo and Bian Ke were to come back to life, they would not be able to do much. In the past, Tang Yuan had suffered a serious illness. All the doctors in the capital were helpless. At the critical moment, it was this Fong Huisheng who saved his life. Thus, Tang Yuan was very grateful to Fong Huisheng. After all, he was his benefactor. Fong Huisheng nodded his head and smiled kindly. Without saying anything, he sat by the bed and placed his hand on June Moxie's wrist. At the same time, he carefully observed June Moxie's complexion. He opened his eyelids and even let June Moxie stick out his tongue to take a look. At this moment, a thought suddenly appeared in June Moxie's mind. His internal energy controlled the flow of energy in his body. His meridians moved a few times, and his pulse became abnormal. This was a mysterious force that did not belong to this world. Of course, no one would be able to see through it. Fong Huisheng's expression gradually turned solemn. He had originally thought that Jun Jean Tian was making a mountain out of a molehill when he asked His Majesty for help. But now that he had taken Jun Jean Tian's pulse, he suddenly discovered that the condition of this young man's body was unexpectedly terrible. Sweat, I won't say anything else. Everyone, continue reading. Chapter 81. Jun Jean Tian noticed a change in his expression and could not help but feel apprehensive. He asked, "Old Fong, how is it?" Fong Huixing looked at Jun Moxie pitifully and shook his head. Sighing, he said, "His life is not in danger. However, the other aspects are very bad." "Very bad?" Grandpa Jun was shocked. "How bad?" "His meridians are stagnant and showing signs of drying up. His internal organs are damaged." "This?" He sighed and raised his head. Did third young master go through intense physical training? Furthermore, did it exceed the limits of his body? Jun Jean Tian felt that something was wrong. "Yes, there were 7 days before yesterday." "That's it. That's right." Fong Huisheng retracted his hand and furrowed his brows. "There is a limit to a person's strength." Third young master's body was originally weak and deficient. He relied solely on his strong willpower to endure the intense training that his body could not handle. How could his veins and meridians withstand it? He had already sustained internal injuries. If that was all he needed to do was stop the training and recuperate properly. Then there would be a chance for him to recover. However, at this point in time, his chest and abdomen were struck by an assassin's sword in 2 kicks, causing his internal organs to be injured. Furthermore, his internal organs were damaged by the sword's aura, causing the accumulated internal injuries to be triggered. How could he be lucky enough to have sustained these 2 injuries? That was not all. The most difficult part was that after he was struck by the sword, he did not manage to stop the bleeding in time, causing him to lose too much blood. He shook his head and said, "After this, third young master being able to preserve his life and live as an ordinary person is already a great blessing. Moreover, if there is any intense activity in the future, you will feel dizzy and your internal organs will feel as if they are on fire. Even your life will be in danger." Jun Jean Tian was stunned and his expression changed. "It's that serious? Does the divine doctor have any means of recuperating? Is there no hope of a full recovery?" Fong Huixing sighed and said, "As the saying goes, there is a limit to one's strength. Even though I am hailed as a divine doctor, I don't really have the ability to connect with the gods. With the current situation, even if the gods were to reincarnate, I'm afraid they would be powerless." "Old Master Jun, you wish for your son to become a dragon. Everyone shares the same sentiments. Although it is an earnest matter, you should still act according to your capabilities." As he spoke, he picked up the brush and wrote a prescription, saying, "Follow this prescription, cut it 3 times a day, and nurse it carefully. You might be able to recover a little, but as for the cultivation of Xian Qi, I believe there is no hope for it in this lifetime." Grandpa Jun was dumbstruck. Even Tang Yuan was dumbfounded. However, who would dare to doubt the words that came out of the mouth of this medical magnate? Who had the right to doubt it? With a forced laugh, Jun Jean Tian's face darkened as he said, "Being able to preserve my life without becoming handicapped and being able to move freely like an ordinary person is good enough. As for Xian Qi, there are countless people in Tianxiang Kingdom who have never come into contact with it in their entire lives, but aren't they still able to achieve great things?" Although he said that, even Tang Yuan could hear the disappointment in the old man's voice. Tang Yuan comforted him. "That's right. Just like our current imperial tutor Li, isn't he just a weak scholar? Isn't he still able to move unhindered in the imperial court, second only to 1 and above tens of thousands?" Fatty Tang's words were originally meant to be a compliment, but he did not expect Grandpa Jun to become enraged when he heard it, thinking that Fatty was scolding him in a roundabout way. One must know that imperial tutor Li Xianqi was personally crippled by Jun Jean Tian, which led to an unresolvable enmity between the 2 families, an enmity that could never be resolved. "Scram!" Grandpa Jun roared. Fatty Tang was frightened by Grandpa Tang's words, and his whole body trembled. He was so scared that he pissed his pants and ran away. He didn't know how he had offended Grandpa Tang. He was obviously following Grandpa Tang's words. Fong Huisheng sighed, packed up his medicine box, and took his leave. Grandpa Jun arranged for a few guards to send him back, but he himself sat by his grandson's bedside without moving. This action caused Fong Huisheng to curse in his heart. What a huge difference in treatment between coming and going. Turning around, he found that Jun Moxie was still laughing. Grandpa Jun sighed and said angrily, "What are you laughing at, kid? This old man spent so much effort to get thousandly shadowless to follow you and protect you. But you did it. You thought you were smart and used all sorts of methods to get rid of him. But in the end, you ended up like this. Look at you, what should I say to you? Sigh." Grandpa Jun shook his head and sighed, feeling that he had used up all the sighs he could have in this lifetime. "Grandpa, please be at ease." Jun Moxie looked at the deep concern on Jun Zhan Tian's face and felt his heart warm. He could not bear to hide it from him anymore, and said, "Just now, Mr. Fong's diagnosis was a result of me tampering with it. Actually, my body is not as serious as he said." After saying that, he chuckled and activated his Xian Qi. The sickly look on his face was instantly swept away, and he became radiant. Jun Zhan Tian's expression shook, and a burst of extreme ecstasy surged onto his face. But then, before the ecstasy could spread, it was covered with a layer of doubt and a little bit of understanding. "I want to hear your reasoning. Anything, even your thoughts." Jun Zhan Tian's eyes became very sharp, and he looked at Jun Moxie, as if trying to figure out what this grandson of his was thinking. At the same time, Jun Zhan Tian turned his head and shouted, "From now on, within a radius of 300 feet from this room, I will not allow anyone with ears to exist. Anyone who disobeys will be killed without mercy." A reply was heard from outside, followed by a continuous schwa-schwa sound. In just a moment, the outside seemed to have become completely silent, and not a single sound could be heard. Hiding it from the imperial physician meant that he was lying to the emperor. Therefore, Jun Zhan Tian was very careful. Jun Moxie, who was lying down, suddenly sat up. He was still wearing his pajamas. He tightened the belt around his waist and got off the bed. Then he sat down in an armchair opposite his grandfather, Jun Zhan Tian. This action made Grandpa Jun pleasantly surprised. It seemed that his grandson's body was indeed fine. This grandson really had good methods. Even the world's #1 divine physician, Fong Huisheng, had been deceived by him. However, Grandpa Jun's face immediately turned solemn. He had a premonition that what Jun Moxie was going to say next was going to be very serious, and it might even be something that he did not want to hear. In fact, it might even be a little disgraceful. Thus, Grandpa Jun had long ago isolated any information from this room. Unless there was the legendary Great Master Shun, Xian hiding and eavesdropping, no one would be able to hide from Grandpa Jun's eyes and ears. From Jun Moxie's many years of forbearance to his current feigned injury, Grandpa Jun could smell that something was amiss. He could even roughly guess what his grandson was going to say. Thus, he became especially solemn and solemn. Because the Jun family is currently in a very dangerous situation, I had no choice but to step forward. My original intention was to live a life of debauchery. Jun Moxie opened his mouth, but first removed himself. Unfortunately, I'm the only one left in the 3rd generation of the Jun family. Even if I wanted to stay out of this, I can't. Thus, I must not enter the eyes of all the great families within the capital. I understand this point, and I have also guessed it. Grandpa Jun stroked his beard. Based on this point alone, your feigning injury is very successful. I'm very gratified. Also, Grandfather's previous actions may have intimidated all the great families within the capital, but the Jun family's strength has been revealed. Regardless of whether it is in the imperial court or in the shadows, they are too powerful. This kind of strength is something that the imperial family cannot tolerate. At the same time, this matter is also a huge taboo. However, first, it coincidentally catered to His Majesty's intentions. Pushing the boat with the current, it allowed His Majesty to complete the reshuffle of power within the capital. Second, His Majesty took into account grandfather's past friendship and countless contributions. Third, grandfather is already very old. Third uncle is seriously injured and crippled. This grandson is a good-for-nothing debauchee. Thus, His Majesty's suspicions were averted. However, this kind of thing can only happen once. This time, I barely managed to get away with it. Next time might not be the same. Even now, if His Majesty were to find out that this grandson's debauchery was just a facade of serious injuries, his suspicions would increase. When that time comes, I fear that the June family would immediately face a calamity. This is the biggest reason why I pretended to be injured. Chapter 82. June Jean Tian remained silent, but he was secretly nodding in his heart. He was completely disheartened by what had happened a few days ago. He had planned to perish together with the emperor, but His Majesty had stopped him. Moreover, his grandson had returned safe and sound. His mood had naturally changed. If it was not the June family, any other family would have been flattened, even if they had catered to His Majesty's wishes. Thinking about it now, it was truly thrilling and frightening. Grandfather, there is no doubt that you are loyal to the royal family. But that is only you, June Moxie said. Although the June family appears to be the most powerful family in the world, the June family's power is dependent on His Majesty's imperial decree. Once this imperial decree is issued, the June family will collapse in an instant. I'm not used to this. I believe that even third uncle may not be used to it. I have never been used to having my fate in the hands of others. That is why I would rather be a debauchee for the rest of my life. But now that my debauchee life has come to an end, I need to change. And the premise of this change is I need to control the June family in my own hands. June Moxie looked at June Jean Tian. This is my highest goal, my ultimate plan, and the foundation of all my plans. Controlling one's fate in one's own hands. For you to have such thoughts, it means that you're showing signs of rebellion. Grandpa June's body trembled as he looked at him sternly. Grandfather, you have misunderstood. In my opinion, those who want to be emperors and those who have already become emperors are fools. Especially those who are determined to become emperors. They are the fools among fools. June Moxie snorted. Even if you have the power to overturn the world, even if you have 3,000 beauties, it is all meaningless to me. I have no interest at all. Grandpa June was so angry that his chest heaved up and down. His white beard was blown into a mess. For the loyal Grandpa June, these words had undoubtedly insulted his most loyal subject. If the one who spoke was not June Moxie, he would have died 17 or 18 times over. Grandfather, a straightforward person does not resort to insinuations. Let me make it clear today. His Majesty would never allow the June family to possess such great strength and outstanding descendants. That was a great threat to the throne. Father, second uncle, and my two brothers' deaths, I will investigate it clearly sooner or later. If there are any mysteries behind it, I might have to seek justice. June Moxie said calmly. All right, since I've admitted that I'm June Moxie, I naturally have to do something for this family. And this matter is probably the June family's biggest worry. Grandpa June sighed dejectedly. After pondering for a long time, he stood up, turned around, and said, when the former emperor established the Tianxiang kingdom, he intentionally moved several of the great families of the kingdom to Tianxiang City, bestowing them with high positions. This method has two advantages. First, all the great families are gathered together, making it easier to control. Second, all the great families keep each other in check, making it easier to maintain a balance of power. Only in this way can the imperial family gain control of the situation. At present, in Tianxiang City, with the exception of the Yi family, the Jun family, Li family, Dugu family, Mu Rong family, and the Tang family each occupy their own territory. In recent years, the Meng family and the Song family have also been added, but in the end, they're nothing more than clowns, and they can't be compared to the great clans mentioned earlier. The military is led by the Jun family and the Dugu family. Although the Mu Rong family wants to meddle in the military, as long as Dugu Zongheng and I are around, They will never be able to interfere. On the surface, the Li and Meng families are our biggest rivals. They're constantly thinking of ways to bring each other down. Moreover, these two families are related by marriage. Among the younger generation of the Li family, there is a talented Li Yuran. Naturally, they're a bigger threat. The Song family has always kept a low profile, so we can ignore them for now. The Jun family and the Dugu family are rivals in the military. Usually we have small squabbles. That old bastard Dugu Zongheng is not convinced by me. But this is not the main point. The main point is that although our two families keep each other in check, we are both loyal to the imperial family. So, we will never really have a falling out. You have to keep this in mind. This is also the reason why the Jun family can stand tall in the imperial court. Among the great families, the Mu Rong family is the most ambitious. You must be wary of them, but you don't have to be deliberate. These great families all have their own schemes. Once the time comes for a real purge, everything will be revealed. Everything will be revealed on the surface. But before that happens, no matter what happens, we will all live in harmony with each other. This is the unspoken principle of the Zhu clan. So, now is the time when you youngsters are stirring up trouble. Everyone is watching you youngsters make trouble. Even if the trouble is a bit outrageous, everyone will just laugh it off. But at the same time, everyone is paying attention to you youngsters. They want to see which of the youngsters is the most threatening. Grandpa is very pleased that you're able to see this clearly. Grandpa Jun avoided Jun Moxie's topic of investigating the deaths of the two generations of the Jun family. Instead, he began to analyze the situation within the capital. 3 years ago, His Majesty had intended to appoint a crown prince. But after a series of tests, he had no choice but to give up on this idea. He allowed the three princes to fight amongst themselves while he hid behind the scenes and watched as his three sons made trouble. His Majesty had always believed that all three of his sons were wolves. But in the competition between the three wolves, there will always be a king. And the final victor will be His Majesty's successor. Jun Moxie sneered, but did not say anything. Grandpa Jun smiled bitterly and shook his head. But a wolf will always be a wolf. It will never transform into a tiger, nor will it transform into a dragon. Even if it is the Wolf King, it will still follow the path of a wolf. However, His Majesty clearly does not have a better choice. He could only force them again and again, oppress them again and again, but at the same time, intimidate them again and again, tame them again and again. Of course, the old foxes of the various families have noticed this. For the sake of their own families, they would not easily intervene in the disputes between the princes. However, within each family, there will always be someone who is very close to one of the princes. Imperceptibly, a balance has been maintained. At present, the three princes are not involved at all. The first is my Jun family, the second is the Dugu family, and the third is the Li family. Grandpa Jun spoke in a seemingly inexplicable manner, completely unrelated to what Jun Moxie had said. It seemed as though he was talking to himself, but at the same time, it also seemed as though he was talking to Jun Moxie. After saying that, he finally came to a conclusion. So, as long as you know what you intend to do and don't go overboard, I will cooperate and do whatever I want. After saying that, Grandpa Jun stood up tiredly and said, "Right now, I have no choice but to recognize my old age. I can only watch from the side. Your third uncle's body, air crippled. The Jun family can only depend on your actions. No matter what happens, as long as you have a plan in mind and don't let the Jun family fall into eternal damnation, it will be fine." Jun Moxie's eyes lit up. He had keenly grasped the meaning of Grandpa Jun's last sentence. Do whatever I want. This sentence had a profound meaning. No wonder he gave me an analysis of the situation in the capital. It turns out that this was the main part of the plot. That meant that you can do whatever you want. The Jun family will support you, but will not participate. However, if something happens, I will still be responsible for fishing you out. However, when he mentioned third uncle's disability, why did he pause for a moment? This question was immediately answered. Jun Zhantian's eyes carried a gratified expression as he looked at his grandson. As for your third uncle's leg, if you really have a way, then hurry up. No matter what the final result is, do not drag it out. If you drag it out, not only will your third uncle be anxious, there will be others who will be even more anxious. After saying that, Grandpa June glared at him and lectured. Humph, you too. Do you really think that this old man is muddle-headed? You're my grandson, and that is my son. This is the June family's courtyard. You actually colluded to hide it from me? Do you think you can hide it? What joke. Air. June Moxie felt a little awkward. He rubbed his nose and explained. I just don't want you to be disappointed if it fails. I never held any hope for this matter. Grandpa June's eyes widened. His words dealt a heavy blow to June Moxie. June Moxie lowered his head with a dark expression. If you really manage to cure it, do you think that this old man will be so stupid as to announce it to the world? Am I afraid that the world will not know? Then get people to set their sights on you and your father and set up one plot after another to frame you? If you hide anything from me again, this old man will spank both your butts. I will make it so that you will not be able to leave the house for the rest of your lives. June Moxie was flabbergasted and speechless. Forcefully pushed. My brothers and sisters, it will be on the shelves at the beginning of the month. Is everyone ready? Chapter 83. Grandpa June happily vented his anger and walked out with his hands clasped behind his back. As soon as he walked out, the smile on his face instantly became as dark as water. Everyone who saw it could not help but shiver in fear. Just from a look on Grandpa June's face, it seems that the third young master is completely hopeless. Even if he is not a cripple, he is almost there. Can't you see that Grandpa June's face is as black as the bottom of a pot? Tang Yuan returned home and reported to old Master Tang what had happened. Grandpa June sighed endlessly. He did not expect that the only descendant of the June family, a family of generals, could only turn to the path of a civil official. It is really sad and lamentable. As for the matter of Grandpa June's sudden anger, Tang Yuan hemmed and hawed. Sure enough, old Master Tang was also furious. Idiot! What nonsense are you spouting when you don't know? That old fart Li Shang was punched in the dantian by June Zhantian. Get lost. How could Tang Yuan not know that his flattery had gone too far? He immediately covered his head and scampered away like a rat. In less than a day, the news of the June family's third young master June Moxie had spread throughout the capital. Some time ago, there was a rumor that June Moxie, one of the capital's hedonistic sons, had turned over a new leaf at home. Every family had heard of it. However, this news was a little too shocking. Some people even launched secret investigations into the matter and investigated many of June Moxie's past actions. Of course, June Moxie was not scary. Even if he was scary, he was just a young boy. What was scary was that the June family had a successor, a rising star. Today, when this heavy and sorrowful news spread out, many people immediately breathed a sigh of relief. It even became a laughingstock, a topic of conversation after a meal. A playboy suddenly turned over a new leaf, and walked on the right path. Then, after training himself for a few days, he directly crippled himself. Before he worked hard, he still had some chi cultivation, but now he was completely crippled. Was there anything funnier than this in the world? As for the authenticity of this news, no one doubted it anymore. This was because both sources were authentic and authoritative. June Moxie's hardcore friend, Tang Yuan, had witnessed it with his own eyes and spread the news. The #1 imperial physician in the palace, Feng Huisheng, also known as Mr. Immortal, personally diagnosed the illness. Who dared to doubt it? Who would doubt it? Who in these noble families did not care about their lives? Feng Huisheng was the life insurance for these people when they were sick or injured. Befriending Feng Huisheng was equivalent to having an extra life. If anyone dared to say, I doubt the words of Feng, godly doctor, in less than half a day, this person would drown in his own saliva. In fact, not to mention Emir June Moxie, even Grandpa June himself would not be able to play tricks in front of miracle Dr. Feng. I didn't expect that June Moxie would be like this. Something's not right. In the Grand Preceptor's mansion, Li Yuran looked at the three people in front of her and frowned slightly. Li Feng, Are you sure that these words were really said by miracle Dr. Fong himself? I am sure. An old voice came from outside, and the Grand Preceptor, Li Shang, walked in shakily. Facing his own grandson, Grand Preceptor Li's face was full of joy. Jun Tian. So what if you are an arrogant old man? But your Jun family is destined to decline. This is something that even the gods can't change. Jun Mo Xie is walking the path of a civil servant. Not to mention the fact that he's a good-for-nothing. Even if he were a genius, would we give him the opportunity to rise? You must know that all the civil servants of the empire are in the hands of our families. Li Yuran smiled and said, since grandfather is so sure, then the Jun family is no longer a threat to us. Li Shang nodded and warned, so from now on, do not provoke Jun Tian. This old thing will really kill people. As he said this, he gave Li Yuran a warning look. Li Yuran had been slapped and kicked by Jun Tian in front of everyone. Although Grand Preceptor Li knew that his grandson could endure it, he also knew that Li Yuran was a vengeful person. Although she didn't mention it and didn't show it on her face, she would never let it go. She would definitely take revenge if there was an opportunity. And now, Li Shang's intention was to persuade Li Yuran to give up on this idea of revenge. After all, the current Jun Tian was a half-mad old lion that no one could afford to provoke in the entire empire. Especially now that His Majesty was protecting him, he couldn't afford to offend him at all costs. Furthermore, Jun Tian had revealed the Jun family's hidden strength in a fit of rage last night. It was truly shocking. In the face of such strength, no matter which family it was, if they were to rashly clash head-on, they would be badly injured. Jun Tian could even exterminate some of the weaker clans in a single night. That was not a difficult thing to do. Li Yuran narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, don't worry, grandfather. I won't do such an unwise thing. But it's Jun Moxie. It's not a big deal to play with him once in a while, right? A person who has just lost his Xian Qi cultivation will definitely indulge in wine and women. As for the matters between the younger generation, grandfather and Jun Tian won't care too much. Li Shang smiled and said, just don't go too far. The four grandsons agreed in unison. In the imperial palace, His Majesty the Emperor reclined on the dragon throne with a soft cushion behind him. His eyes were slightly narrowed and his expression was calm. Fong Huisheng stood respectfully in front of him, his brows lowered. Then, Jun Moxie really can't? His Majesty the Emperor asked after a long time. Yes. According to this old official's diagnosis, there is no falsehood in this matter. Fong Huisheng said with certainty. He habitually stroked his beard and said, Jun Moxie has always been naughty and mischievous. He is used to committing outrages. If he can behave himself, it would be a blessing for the people of the capital. A blessing for the people? He. His Majesty the Emperor laughed and closed his eyes. This old official will take his leave. Fong Huisheng bowed and left. After he left, His Majesty the Emperor's lips curled into an undetectable smile. It was a smile of comfort and relief. At this moment, Grandpa Jun had taken a 3-month-long vacation. In the eyes of outsiders, this old man's temperament seemed to have changed greatly. After this incident, he seemed to have become disheartened. This series of actions made people feel that it was unimaginable. His Majesty the Emperor had even specially sent someone to express his condolences. For example, Grandpa Jun walked out of the door and suddenly became furious. He shouted, where did all these trees come from? Chop them all down. The weather is getting colder, and I can't even see the sun. What kind of shameful statement is this? Thus, with a single order, everything within a radius of 5 to 6 miles around the Jun residence became barren, a stretch of smooth, yellow soil. In addition, Grandpa Jun looked at the walls and became furious. The walls are so short. Wouldn't it be easy for thieves to come and go as they please? Increase the height of this old man. As a result, the wall, which was originally 6 feet tall, doubled in height overnight. Furthermore, it was unknown where the idea came from, but the old master ordered for the top of the wall to be filled with thorns that were 5 feet tall. It was so dense that even a bird might not have the guts to perch on top of it. Another possibility was that Junjan Tian seemed to be finding his good-for-nothing grandson more and more displeasing to the eye. Or perhaps he had become addicted to building buildings. So, Junjan Tian had actually built 2 small courtyards in his own courtyard. Jun Mo Xia was trapped inside. As for the 2 neighboring courtyards, the left belonged to Jun Wui and the right belonged to Guanqing Han. The area of these 2 courtyards was not small at all. In fact, they occupied almost half of the Jun residence. The other half was occupied by Grandpa Jun alone. From time to time, the sound of things being smashed could be heard. All the servants of the Jun residence kept quiet out of fear. They didn't even dare to speak loudly as they walked. Forcefully pushed. "Brothers, help me push the evil monarch up. Thank you." Chapter 84. A few days later, Grandpa Jun suddenly became interested and ordered people to carry out a large-scale construction in the garden of the Jun residence. Countless flowers were uprooted and a tower-shaped building was erected. It was 7 stories high, and a sentry tower was placed at the top to monitor the movements in the surroundings. When he had nothing to do, Grandpa Jun would often bring his men to patrol the residences of the officials near the Jun residence. In the middle of the night, the sound of horses' hooves would suddenly resound, and deafening battle cries would resound. Grandpa Jun was using his remaining energy to train his troops. However, this training did not matter. In the next few days, the officials near the Jun residence became more and more alarmed. In the end, they did not hesitate to spend a lot of money to buy new houses and move away. Then, without waiting for anyone to move in, Grandpa Jun gave the order and all the mansions were razed to the ground. Since he had nothing to do, Grandpa Jun began to train the guards of the mansion as if they were regular soldiers. Then, the Jun family's external procurement staff revealed that when Grandpa Jun had nothing to do, he would often drink to drown his sorrows and get drunk. Everyone understood this point. No matter who it was, to suddenly fall into despair when they saw hope, they would not be able to bear it. Fortunately, Grandpa Jun's alcohol tolerance was not bad, and he did not go around drinking to act crazy. This could be considered a blessing in misfortune. In fact, everyone could understand. In the midst of his disappointment towards his grandson, he suddenly saw hope for his grandson to turn over a new leaf. But just as he saw hope, he received news of his grandson's death. Just as he was about to fall into despair, he received news that his grandson was still alive. Just as he received news that his grandson was still alive, before he could even rejoice, he was told that his grandson had become a cripple. Isn't this deliberately toying with people? Even if one's mental fortitude was strong, to be able to withstand such a violent upheaval was already an admirable feat. Putting themselves in Grandpa Jun's shoes, if they were to encounter such a thing, they would have long since collapsed. Their performance would not even be as good as Grandpa Jun's. Thus, they were not surprised by Grandpa Jun's various abnormalities. The pitiful old thing was being toyed with by the heavens. It was already good enough that he hadn't gone mad. "Do whatever you want, as long as you don't do anything to me." Almost everyone had the same thought. Even the emperor, who had always been wise, more or less had the same thought. In the courtyard of the Jun family, which was recognized as a forbidden area by everyone, Jun Moxie was smiling happily as he poured a glass of wine for Jun Wui. The wine was refreshing and fragrant. It was so clear that one could see the bottom of the glass. I didn't expect Mo Xia to have such ability. This wine was truly a peerless wine. The ones I drank before were truly trash. Jun Wui took a sip and narrowed his eyes in an intoxicated manner. In another corner, for burly warriors were wielding iron hammers and blowing bellows as they did the work of blacksmiths. The blazing flame was so hot that it was almost silver white. A large piece of iron was burned red. Then they took it out and raised their noses to sniff the fragrance of the wine in the air. At the same time, they fiercely swung their sledgehammers and hammered down again and again. Their bodies were drenched in sweat, but the piece of iron did not show any signs of change. It could be seen that this piece of iron had reached an unimaginable level of toughness. Young master had said that as long as this piece of iron was hammered to his satisfaction every day, each of them would be rewarded with a pot of wine. Heavens, such good wine! Even the emperor himself might not have tasted it before. How could this not be a job for these four warriors who valued wine as much as their lives? Winemaking is just a small part of the acrobatics. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to drink it ourselves. It's really unbearable to drink that kind of bastard wine every day. June Moxie elegantly took a sip. He squinted his eyes and asked with interest, "Third uncle, I heard that when Grandpa drank this wine for the first time, he got drunk." "I heard that, he got drunk." Jun Wooey frowned, and his face darkened as he lectured. "Don't talk about your elders behind their backs." Jun Moxie touched his nose and was still in high spirits. He did not give up and asked, "I heard that Grandpa sang when he got drunk?" He even stuck his head in the pig's head and fell asleep. "You brat, are you looking for a beating? Don't you know that it's taboo to speak the truth?" Jun Wooey was annoyed and amused at the same time. "Who asked you not to tell me that this wine is so strong? It's already good enough that your grandpa didn't come to settle the score with you. He had to wash his beard for the whole morning before he could wash it clean." "Oh." Jun Moxie gave a meaningful "oh" and smirked. "Grandpa doesn't seem to be a good drinker. Let's not talk about this anymore." Jun Wooey felt a little uncomfortable and was not interested in discussing Grandpa Junior. On the other hand, shouldn't you be preparing? Jun Moxie's face suddenly turned bitter. He raised his glass and drank it in one gulp, letting out a long sigh. A few days ago, Grandpa Jun suddenly had a whimsical idea. Because Jun Moxie's xianqi cultivation was not high, Grandpa Jun was unable to find a sparring partner for him. He was also worried that the secret would leak out. A few days ago, he suddenly had an idea and invited Guan Qinghan to spar with Jun Moxie. This was the beginning of Jun Moxie's journey to hell. In fact, this was Grandpa Jun's deliberate prank on his precious grandson. Who asked this guy to hide it from him for so many years? He really deserved a beating. Jun Moxie felt helpless. Facing his sister-in-law, he could not possibly kill her in one blow, right? But if he did not subdue the other party, he would start to suffer. After all, although his art of unlocking heaven's fortune was amazing, he had only practiced it for less than 2 months. How could he be a match for Guan Qinghan, who had been cultivating xianqi since childhood? Guan Qinghan's family had a long history, and she was now on the verge of breaking through to silver-level xianqi. Jun Mo's eyes and face didn't have the same lustful look as before. This made Guan Qinghan raise her guard. But she also didn't feel so uncomfortable. Moreover, there was another reason. Jun Moxie's newly brewed wine was brewed with fruits. It was sweet and especially delicious. Aside from the slightly strong after effect, it was simply a heavenly wine that could not be tasted outside. Guan Qinghan liked it the moment she drank it. That was why Guan Qinghan was reluctant. Now that the wind and rain had arrived, the change was very fast. She came to beat up her brother-in-law to vent her anger, and then she could get 2 pots of good wine as a reward. Such a beneficial thing to the body and mind. Moreover, Grandpa Jun had ordered her to abuse him as she pleased. Doing it 8 or 10 times a day was not too much. If she did not do it, it would be intolerable. AI. Jun Moxie sighed. He suddenly remembered something and asked, "Third uncle, how was the medicine you ordered people to collect? It has been so long. It should be about time, right?" Jun Wooey sighed and said, "Gut-splitting flour, macaroni, and severing root are all here, and the quantity is not small. But there is no news of the blazing heart meridian. As for the 9-leaf grass, this herb is relatively rare. Few people use it, so it is not easy to find. A few days ago, I heard that the Golden Fragrance Trading Company had found 3 of them, and they were transporting them to the capital. I hurriedly sent people to buy them, but I did not expect that when I arrived, they had already been bought. Someone bought it." Jun Moxie suddenly became vigilant. He straightened his back and said, "If it is not a serious injury caused by blocked meridians, it will not be used. How could it be bought at such a critical juncture? Could it be that the news was leaked and someone is targeting our Jun family?" Second chapter updated in advance. It was really last night that I was stuck on the plot. I had to write all night to figure it out. I am so sleepy that I will not wait for 9 o'clock. I'm going to sleep. I will leave the rest to my brothers and sisters. Third chapter in the afternoon. Chapter 85. Someone bought it. June Moxie suddenly became vigilant. He straightened his back and said, "That kind of medicine wouldn't be used if the meridians weren't blocked. How could it be bought at such a critical juncture? Could it be that the news was leaked and someone is targeting our June family?" No. June Wui shook his head and said, "Even the person who was looking for the medicine doesn't know why he was looking for it. He doesn't know that it has anything to do with me. I don't think it's targeting me. But this coincidence is too much of a coincidence. Could it be that the heavens are making fun of me and won't let me recover?" June Moxie frowned and slowly paced back and forth. If only one of the 5 medicines was missing, June Moxie could use other methods to make up for it no matter what it was missing. But if 2 medicines were missing, third uncle, did you send in order to find out who stole the medicine before third uncle did? We're already looking into it. But this matter has just happened, so we haven't found anything yet. June Wui smiled faintly. He didn't seem to be in a hurry. Instead, he comforted him. Third uncle has waited for so many years. It doesn't matter if we wait for another month or 2. Don't worry, don't worry. June Moxie nodded heavily. He held the wine glass and thought about it in a daze. But the more he thought about it, the more he felt clueless. June Wui saw that he was lost in thought. So, he didn't disturb him. He just poured himself a cup of wine and enjoyed himself. June Wui suddenly laughed when he heard the sound of familiar footsteps. Guan Qinghan was dressed in snow-white clothes. Her pretty face was covered with frost. She slowly walked over. As she gradually approached, June Moxie felt as if an iceberg was slowly pressing down on him. The delicate woman's body emitted a bone-chilling aura. It made people feel that even the heart of this fairy-like beauty in white had long been frozen. June Moxie had objected to the fact that Guan Qinghan was here to spar with him many times. He believed that with his fighting skills, the only thing he lacked was strength. In this world, if he claimed to be the second best at killing, no one would dare to claim to be the first. However, Grandpa June didn't know about this secret, and he couldn't let him know about it either. So, Grandpa June firmly rejected June Moxie's protest. Especially after witnessing Guan Qinghan's abuse on the first day, Grandpa June only said one sentence and left. That sentence was, "I am very satisfied. Continue to beat me up." It was June Wui's first time seeing it, so of course he had to open his eyes wide to see clearly. For the past month, as an elder, he had repeatedly suffered losses at the hands of his nephew. Naturally, June Wui wouldn't let go of this pleasing opportunity to vent his anger. After all, such an opportunity was rare. "I really don't know how to fight," June Moxie wailed in his heart. Perhaps it should be said that June Moxie didn't dare to fight back. The hitman June had lived 2 lives. His hands were stained with blood. He could kill people with just a wave of his hand. He was extremely proficient in killing people. However, when it came to exchanging pointers with ordinary martial skills, not to mention those true killing moves, even those methods that could be used to subdue the enemy would easily injure the opponent's limbs. Hence, it was absolutely not allowed to be used, especially when the opponent was his sister-in-law. Although this sister-in-law didn't like him, he couldn't kill her, right? Of course, he couldn't break her arms or legs. Even a normal dislocation would be a bit embarrassing for a woman. Moreover, there were some parts of a woman's body that were difficult to deal with unless they were mortal enemies. Since these methods couldn't be used, Jun Dashao didn't have many methods to deal with the enemy, especially when he was facing his sister-in-law, whose Xianqi cultivation was far above his own. The stronger one would be able to fight to their heart's content. However, the weaker one would have their hands and feet tied. The difference between the strong and the weak was irreversible. How could the hitman not exhaust all his tricks and complain incessantly? Guan Qinghan stood there quietly, like a snow lotus flower on an iceberg, aloof and unattainable, yet proud and aloof, pure and clean. "Can we not fight today?" June Moxie pitifully put forward a condition. "I could give you 2 more pots of wine, okay?" "Not good. Guan Xinghan's face was as cold as ever. She clapped her hands together, but a black gas came out. Ninth level Xian Qi. Are you ready? Guan Xinghan looked at him without surprise or joy, as if she was looking at a human sandbag that could take a beating. Bah, would you be so proactive if I didn't give you wine? God, are you kidding me? You actually gave this woman a legitimate opportunity to beat me up. I can't really fight back. Ready? What's the use of being ready? Jun Moxie was very angry. His concealment from his grandfather had certainly brought about positive effects. That was, he had aroused his grandfather's hopes. But at the same time, it had also brought about negative effects. He had been deceived by his grandson for so many years. His grandfather must be very unhappy. Therefore, Guan Xinghan's test was completely arranged by his grandfather to mess with him. Perhaps it should be said that this was an overt plot. Unfortunately, he had to eat dumplings in silence. He knew what was going on, but he couldn't say it out loud. The most annoying thing was that he obviously had many ways to deal with this woman, but he couldn't use them. He could have easily dealt with her, but he had to endure the abuse. Was he a masochist? This was the most tragic thing in the world. He didn't know when his grandfather would revoke this punishment. If he had to apologize to his grandfather to end this punishment, he would very sincerely say 3 words to his grandfather. I'm sorry. If he could set a time limit for this punishment, he hoped it would be in the next second. Jun Mo Xie's imagination was running wild. Suddenly, he saw a green aura curling up in front of him. Then, a snow-white hand came flying towards his chest. He let out a strange cry and dodged in a depressed manner. Guan Xinghan didn't relax at all. She tried to finish the task of beating him up in the shortest time possible. She took the 2 pots of wine from the victim and quickly went back. She had no time to play with this little bastard. Although this guy's behavior seemed to have changed recently, Guan Xinghan still didn't have the slightest interest in spending any more time with him. Strange screams, painful screams, and screams were incessant. The pa-pa sound of fists and feet hitting the muscles was like the sound of rain. It was very compact, and it seemed to be very pleasant to the ear. Jun Wei raised his wine glass with one hand and watched the fight. The disparity between the strong and the weak was extremely great. He couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. He thought that his grandfather's idea of punishing his rogue nephew was really wonderful. As he was thinking about this, his eyes suddenly narrowed and his expression changed. He became extremely solemn and stared at Jun Moxie's movements. He didn't even have time to put down his wine glass. Just then, Jun Moxie's movement caught his attention. Guan Xinghan's palm strike had been followed by a kick. The 2 moves had been closely linked. Jun Moxie's body had turned, and his elbow had moved a little. However, he had retracted it and was knocked to the ground. This was a very ordinary and inconspicuous action, but in the eyes of Junwu Yi, the great general of the battlefield, and an Earth Xian expert, it was incomparably thrilling. In a fight on the battlefield, it was important to subdue the enemy with one move. However, even though Jun Moxie had retracted his subconscious movement, Jun Wui could clearly see that the tip of Jun Moxie's elbow was aimed at Guan Xinghan's throat. Guan Xinghan would only need to exert a little bit of force to immediately kill her. But the most important thing was the timing of that movement. It was too perfect. It happened to be the gap between the 2 moves. Guan Xinghan's martial arts were not ordinary. The 2 moves were also very closely linked. That tiny gap was almost fleeting. It could be said that the gap between the 2 moves was very close. That gap could be said to be the biggest flaw of Guan Xinghan's moves. At that time, Guan Xinghan would definitely not have any way to deal with this unpredictable attack. Brothers, sisters, you are too strong. Thank you. Men and women, each one of you can kiss. Chapter 86. Based on the difference in mystical qi between Jun Moxie and Guan Xinghan, even if Guan Xinghan was hit by Jun Moxie in other parts of her body, he might not be able to cause any damage. However, the throat was one of the most vital and vulnerable parts of the human body, and the elbow was the strongest part of the human body. Using the sharpest part of the elbow to overcome the weakest part of the strong, he could defeat the strong with the weak. A one-hit kill. That was a decisive blow that could turn the tables. That was why Jun Wooey was so shocked. Was Xie really so brilliant? Or maybe it was just a coincidence. Jun Wooey was doubtful, and he continued to watch the fight. Although Jun Moxie was being beaten, in Jun Wooey's eyes, Jun Moxie only needed to use strength in every move, and every time, he would kill Guan Qinghan before she could hit Jun Moxie, even more than once in a move. Jun Wooey was silent. He observed carefully. This move, Jun Moxie dodged at the right time. The middle finger of his raised fist had an obvious protrusion. If it was hit in a straight line, it would hit the back of Guan Qinghan's head. This was the most vulnerable part of the human body. If the protrusion of the middle finger hit the fusion point at the back of the head, this move, the position and movement of Jun Moxie's knee was different, and it was pointed. If he didn't retreat, it would be the fatal point of the genitals. Heart, temple, coccyx, eyes, throat, behind the ears. Guan Qinghan was fighting to her heart content, and she was in high spirits. Jun Xie was struggling to dodge and was complaining to the heavens. Jun Wooey, on the other hand, was watching from the side with fear and trepidation. This sweating was because of Guan Qinghan. After every few moves, Jun Wooey would be afraid. Even with his eyesight, he had to take a while to judge the danger that Guan Qinghan was facing. And at this time, a few moves had passed, and Guan Qinghan was facing the call of death countless times. But she was still in high spirits, completely unaware of it. Jun Xie's instinctive reaction and killing intent had been seen through by Jun Xie. Every time, he had forcefully retracted his attack. It was too scary, even with Third Master Jun's Earth Xian cultivation. He could not hold on. Too scary. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees clearly. The onlooker was not only clear, but also scared to death. In fact, he did not dare to rashly interrupt this subtle game of death. He was afraid that his words would disturb Jun Xie. If that happened, Guan Qinghan would be killed in an instant if he didn't stop in time. Jun Moxie's movements were sharp and straightforward, and even Jun Wooey would not be able to stop it in time. Finally, Jun Moxie was knocked to the ground 10 times, and Guan Qinghan felt that she had successfully completed her task. So, she did not say a word and apologized to Jun Wooey. Then, she picked up the 2 pots of wine and walked away victoriously without looking back. From the beginning to the end, she was neither happy nor angry, and her face was as cold as ever. She did not sweat even after such violent movements, and it seemed that beating up Jun Moxie was a piece of cake for Guan Qinghan. After all, it was a high-level Xian beating a low-level mediocre person. Jun Wooey stared blankly at Guan Qinghan's departure, and his heart was incomparably shocked. According to his calculations, in the fight just now, if it had been a real life and death struggle, Guan Qinghan would have died at least 47 times. And every time, Jun Moxie would be able to escape unscathed. This was a frightening number. One must know that Jun Moxie's Xianqi was only at the 4th level, and Guan Qinghan's Xianqi was already at the 9th level, and was about to break through to the silver level. Could it be that the legend of a low-level Xian being unable to defeat a high-level Xian would be broken by this nephew of his? No, this was already a fact. And the most frightening thing was that Jun Xie's actions were clearly subconscious and instinctive reactions. But every time he was about to attack, he would forcefully retract it. What did this mean? What did this mean? Jun Wooey's entire body was drenched in cold sweat. This meant that Jun Moxie was already very familiar with killing, and when he made these movements, it was completely unconscious. He didn't even need to think or consider, and when he was attacked, he could naturally find the enemy's weakness and deliver a fatal blow. Killing was already an instinct. This was the only way such a situation could occur. How many people did he have to kill to hone such instinctive reactions? Even with Jun Wooey's composure, he didn't dare to continue thinking about it. He was used to seeing valiant generals in the army, used to seeing people risking their lives on the battlefield, and even more used to bloody killings. He had experienced countless assassinations by cold-blooded killers, and even personally trained many killers. He had fought more than 100 battles in his life and killed countless people, but he had never seen such a terrifying person. Monster. It was fine if he didn't make a move, but once he made a move, he killed. Killing had completely integrated into his instincts and had become the first reflex reaction. And this terrifying, cruel, and demon-like monster was actually his own nephew. The nephew who was recognized as trash by the entire imperial capital. Jun Moxie. Jun Wooey groaned and covered his eyes. What am I seeing? I must be dreaming. If this is a nightmare, then let me wake up quickly. Nightmare. If Mo. Xie possessed such strength, how could it be a nightmare? Or perhaps it was just a dream. At this moment, Jun Wooey suddenly recalled the words Jun Moxie had said when he was begging Grandpa Jun to retract his order. Grandpa, I don't know how to fight. Really, I really don't know how to fight. The famous debauchee of the capital doesn't know how to fight. When he heard those words, Grandpa Jun's first reaction was to give Jun Moxie a ruthless kick on his buttocks. Then he pointed at the door and roared, "Get out." When Jun Wooey heard those words, he nearly laughed out loud. For a long time, he couldn't help but laugh when he thought of those words. It was too funny. Not knowing how to fight could be understood as not knowing how to fight, but it could also be understood as, and now he finally understood the true meaning of those words. Jun Moxie really did not know how to fight. He only knew how to kill. This extremely pure killing technique had already melted in his blood, melted into his soul, and melted into every bone, every inch of muscle, and every nerve in his body. If a soldier on the battlefield possessed such a technique, even if he was surrounded by millions of soldiers, as long as he still had the strength, he would not fall. As for his enemies, they would be turned into corpses in a row. If an assassin in an assassin organization possessed such a technique, he would be able to succeed in every endeavor. He would be able to create a legend in the Xian continent. No matter who had that kind of technique, they could transform into the Grim Reaper that could steal lives. At such a level, killing had already become a habit, a kind of instinct, or a kind of pinnacle art, or even a supreme achievement. Just like a master craftsman who had mastered the art of painting, with a casual stroke of his brush, he would be able to create a masterpiece. Just like a master of music, with a casual flick of his hand, he would be able to create heavenly music. That was the dream of every soldier and assassin, but no one had ever reached the pinnacle of killing. But Jun Moxie, how could his nephew do it? How could it be Jun Moxie? A huge question appeared in Jun Wooey's mind. Where did he learn it from? How did he master it? Most importantly, what did he use to cultivate it? Jun Wooey felt that this nephew of his was becoming more and more unfathomable. Although his current cultivation level was only at the 4th level, but from his earlier performance, Jun Wooey felt that he had to look up to him. Chapter 87. Jun Mo. Xie patted the dust off his body as if nothing had happened. Then he twisted his buttocks and sat on a chair. This kind of injury was nothing to him. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune ran through his body, and he would be fine. After all, Guan Qinghan wouldn't really be ruthless. Suddenly, he felt that something was wrong. He looked up and found his third uncle, the great general of the battlefield, looking at him with a shocked expression. No, he was looking at him with fear in his eyes. Deep in his eyes, there was a strong sense of scrutiny. There was even a trace of fear, surprise, and awe. How did you do it? Jun Wooey's face darkened. He looked at him like a hawk. Who taught you? Who has such ability? Is it the legendary master Shun Xian? Jun Mo. Xie stared blankly for a moment. Then he understood what was going on and suddenly chuckled. After a while, he raised his glass and drained it. One must have the heart to kill if he wants to be a hero. Jun Moxie chuckled. What third uncle really wants to ask is, how many people have I killed to reach my current level? From Jun Wooey's expression, Jun Moxie knew that his shrewd third uncle had seen through something. Even if he could suppress his instincts in time, there were still signs. Perhaps Guan Qinghan couldn't see through it. Her strength was too limited. But what kind of person was Jun Wooey? He was an Earth-Xian expert and a veteran on the battlefield. He had the advantage of being a bystander. How could he not see through it? Jun Wui snorted and said in a stern voice, "Mo, xia, killing the enemy on the battlefield and taking the enemy's life is something that cannot be helped. But you have never joined the army, yet you are able to train your killing skills. How did you train? It's impossible to reach such a realm without a large amount of bloody experience. Don't tell me you." Jun Wui's voice trembled a little, but there was more anger in it. "You've been in the imperial capital all year round. Don't tell me you've used the lives of ordinary people to train." The third uncle is also a great connoisseur who has experienced life and death, but he says such layman's words. Killing people doesn't necessarily have to be practiced through killing people. Jun Moxie said lightly, "Actually, as long as you can truly familiarize yourself with and understand every bone and joint in a human body, you will naturally be able to do it." He narrowed his eyes and said, "The human body, regardless of gender, has 206 bones. In other words, there are 206 joints. From the thigh up, whether it's the front, back, left, right, up, or down, there are vital points that can kill a person. And no matter what kind of move is used, as long as it's used, there will be fatal points that he can't protect. If you want to make a move, you'll have to use the bones and joints. And the parts that will receive the most force are the parts that are being used. At this time, the parts that are not being used are the flaws, and they are fatal flaws. Once you find this flaw, then the parts that he is using will also become the flaws. Once you understand all of this, it will be easy to find the most advantageous position for yourself and the most disadvantageous position for the enemy. I told Grandpa that I don't know how to fight, and that was the truth. Today, if I fight back with all my strength, how many times will sister-in-law die today? At least 100 times. I don't know if the third uncle can count all of them." Jun Moxie squinted his eyes, and his white teeth gleamed. "I have to admit that I'm already used to this instinct. The landing point of my attack is almost always this position, and it will be fatal. This doesn't seem to be so strange. In this world, no one knows more about the human body than a doctor. But third uncle, have you ever seen a doctor learn to save people because he has killed too many people?" Jun Wui was stunned and said angrily, "You are twisting words and forcing logic." Jun Moxie sighed and said, "Actually, the third uncle is very clear that since I was young, you have basically watched me grow up. Although we haven't met often in these 2 years, the third uncle's intelligence organization has detailed records of where I go every day and what I do every hour. Even when I sleep with a woman, the length of time was recorded, who the woman was, and even the woman's birth date and the 18 generations of her ancestors were investigated in detail. Third uncle, do you really think that I have the ability to kill people silently? This kind of speculation is really absurd, right?" Jun Wui didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and he was dumbfounded. Is there really a natural king of assassins? Jun Wui's eyes widened, and he suddenly felt that his mind was in a mess. This completely subverted his common sense, and this iron-blooded warrior couldn't help but be at a loss. Jun Moxie secretly wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead and quietly let out a long breath. "Oh my God, I am suffocating. It is really difficult to fool this third uncle of this world. But why are you so interested in this kind of killing thing? And your achievements are actually so high. This and your identity is too." Jun Wui still didn't give up and continued to ask, "Third uncle, I, Jun Moxie, have never killed anyone since I came to this world." Jun Moxie's eyes flashed a trace of loneliness and longing, and he spread out his hands, his face full of sincerity and sincerity. This kind of expression was too real, and anyone who saw would immediately know that he was absolutely speaking the absolute truth. And it was the absolute truth. This was indeed the truth. However, when Jun Moxie said that I, Jun Moxie, came to this world, it meant that Jun Moxie had truly accepted this family and started to change his name to Jun Moxie. All in all, it had only been a few days. As for the assassin that I killed a few days ago, that was killed by the generation's king of assassins, Jun Moxie, and not by me, June Moxie. These are two different things, At this moment, Kaer quietly walked over and bowed and said, Third Elder, young master, there's someone outside asking to see Third Elder, saying that he has an urgent matter to report. As she spoke, she blinked her eyes at the mud on June Moxie's body and felt a little heartache. Poor young master, he is being abused again. Recently, young master has become much more amiable. He really shouldn't be subjected to this kind of abuse. June Moxie hurriedly said, Quick, let him in. Finally, a life-saving person came, and he came at the right time. Not long after, a man dressed in green walked in steadily. His steps were strong, his eyes sharp, and his face calm. June Moxie sized him up, thinking that this person could be considered a talent. Not bad, not bad. General, I found the person who bought the 9-leaf grass. Who is it? Jun Wui and June Moxie asked at the same time. It's Lord Da Xiao of the Tang family, Tang Yuan. The man looked up at June Moxie and said with apprehension, Tang Yuan. June Moxie suddenly cried out in disbelief. Why did this fatty buy the 9-leaf grass? Is there someone in the Tang family who needs this medicinal herb? This subordinate doesn't know for now. Jun Wui and June Moxie looked at each other and did not speak. The man tactfully retreated and quietly disappeared. Could it be that the news was leaked? Jun Wui pondered. Definitely not. June Moxie answered with certainty, and then frowned. But why did this fatty buy the 9-leaf grass? This herb's use is very unorthodox, and this matter is really troublesome. After thinking for a while, he raised his head and said, Third uncle, I remember you once said that there were 3 9-leaf grass found this time. That's right. If that's the case, it's better in the hands of Fatty Tang than in the hands of others. I'll think of a way to make him spit out too. Leave this matter to me. June Moxie said confidently. The jade and sword that Fatty Tang lost in the gamble were still in his hands. If he asked for 2 9-leaf grass, he could guarantee that Fatty would run away faster than a rabbit. This could be considered as letting this dead Fatty pick up a bargain. All right. Jun Wui faintly smiled, looked at his legs, and his eyes revealed a trace of excitement. Only the last herb is left, the blazing heart meridian. Many friends have mentioned that June Moxie has killed people. This point was my negligence. Now that I have changed it, perhaps it is not satisfactory. Please understand. Thank you. If there are any mistakes in the future, please point them out. For the sake of our evil monarch, everyone will work hard. Also, grandly recommending a good book. My brother Wu Shan's 9 Deaths in a Different World is now nearing completion. Everyone can read it. I promise you will not be disappointed. There is a direct train on the page. Chapter 88. As the target approached, Jun Wui felt an inexplicable sense of loss and gain. There was no time to lose. June Moxie immediately set off to find Tang Yuan. If the medicine was ruined by Fatty, then it would take a lot more effort to find it. The longer this matter dragged on, the easier it would be for unforeseen events to occur. The third young master June sat on the palanquin with a sickly look on his face as he arrived at the Tang residence in a weak and feeble manner. Just as he arrived at the main entrance, he saw a perfectly round meatball rolling out of the Tang residence. Young Master Tang Yuan's attire today was very distinctive. If he was a few sizes smaller, then he would have been shoveled into a plate and served as a 4-happiness meatball on the dining table. Third young master, why are you here? Are you feeling better? Don't tell me you're looking for me to play with you. Tang Yuan looked at June Mo. Xia happily. His expression was one of genuine joy. I came to find you. June Moxie lifted the curtain of the palanquin. Why, are you going out? Yes, I was just about to go to the magnificent jewel hall to play. There are actually some good things there today. The old man asked me to go there and bid for something. Tang Yuan reached into his bosom and fished out a large stack of banknotes with a schwa sound. He patted the banknotes with his hands and smiled like a Maitreya Buddha. This time, I've been ordered to play. Look, what a thick stack. When I bid for that thing, I reckon there will be a lot left. Third young master, shall we go to the 1,000-jewel hall to play? You won't bet on your wife again, right? June Moxie pursed his lips. Hey, Third young master, if we are brothers, then don't mention this matter. Tang Yuan's round and pale face unexpectedly showed a few black lines. That is being framed. If it was under normal circumstances, I would be the reincarnation of the god of gamblers. This is definitely not a legend. If I can believe your stupid mouth, I might as well believe that there are ghosts in this world. Jun Moxie snorted disdainfully, then straightened his face, ignoring Tang Yuan's puckered face that looked like a bitter gourd, and asked straightforwardly, "Don't be in a hurry to leave. I'm here for something important." "What is it?" "There's nothing that can't be said between us brothers." Tang Yuan blinked his eyes. "I heard you bought 3 9-leaf grass from the Golden Fragrance Medicine Shop. Now that I'm injured, I need that thing. Quick, take it out and give it to me." Jun Moxie didn't hesitate and directly asked for it. "Who told you that? This was simply an injustice. Don't you know that I hate those grass and leaves the most?" The fat all over Tang Yuan's body trembled with excitement, and his fat face turned red. "When have I ever seen that thing? What 9-leaf grass or 7-leaf grass? I don't know anything about it." Jun Moxie's face darkened. "Tang Yuan, you don't know? It's not easy for me to talk to you, and you're telling me you don't know? Do you still want that jade and sword of yours? Damn it. I'll throw it into the manure pit later. I really don't know." Tang Yuan jumped up anxiously. This was an extremely difficult action for him. He gritted his teeth, pointed to the sky, and swore, "Big brother, I wouldn't dare to lie to you. Whoever knows about that thing is a son of a tortoise, a bastard. Golden Fragrance Medicine Shop." Just as he finished swearing, he suddenly opened his eyes wide and shouted, "Damn it, third young master, did you just say Golden Fragrance Medicine Shop? You're not deaf." Jun Moxie snorted and looked at him from the corner of his eyes, wanting to see what trick this fatty was playing. Although on the surface, he didn't look like someone who would play tricks. "That's my family's business." Tang Yuan's cheeks trembled, and his small eyes were round. "Damn it, I've only bought medicine once in my life, and it was for you. 5 days ago, I went to my family's medicine shop and ransacked it, then sent it to your residence." As he spoke, Tang Yuan slapped his thigh. Coincidentally, a lot of fresh medicinal herbs arrived that day. I didn't know what they were exactly, but the shopkeeper said that they were of high quality. So, I packed them all up and stuffed them into a box. Then, I brought them all over for you. If there's any 9-leaf grass or 7-leaf grass, then it's in your house. Jun Moxie's eyes widened, and he stuttered, "Didn't you just send something like 100 caddies that day? Brother, are you out of your mind?" Tang Yuan rolled his eyes with difficulty and looked at him with disdain. "I have to deceive people when I send good things, right? I sent 2 big boxes. The surface layer is filled with authentic medicinal herbs like ginseng, angelica, and fulling, and they're all fresh. The bottom layer is filled with good stuff like 100 caddies. That day, I was just about to say it, but I was scolded by your old man. These few days, I've been worried that the stuff would grow moldy and grow hair. I can't bear to send those good stuff if they're not my brother." After saying that, Fatty Tang concluded, "So I don't have any grass, but you do." Jun Moxie staggered and almost fell out of the sedan chair. After a long while, he squeezed out 2 words from between his teeth, "Damn." Immediately, he lost interest in arguing with Tang Yuan. Jun Moxie was burning with impatience, and he wanted to rush back. If the stuff really grew moldy in the box, it would be terrible. This fatty was really a sinner. Tang Yuan pulled him back. "What's the hurry, third young master? You've just recovered from a serious illness, and it's rare for you to come out. Come with me to the auction. I heard that there's a lot of good stuff today. Let's brothers go and clean up the place." As he said that, he pulled out a piece of paper from his bosom. His finger was dipped in saliva, and his radish like finger-pointed. Look, there's also the bright jade pendant, glass flower, seabed jade coral. These are all good stuff. I don't have time to accompany you to fool around." Jun Moxie shrunk his head back to the sedan chair, but before he could finish his words, his head also shrunk back. Suddenly, his eyes widened, and he looked like an old hen whose neck had been choked. Suddenly, he changed his tone and said, "Okay, let's go take a look. Let's brothers go and clean up the place." After saying that, he immediately arranged for a guard to go home, and let him inform Kerr to immediately empty out all the things in Tang Yuan's 2 boxes and carefully put them away one by one. Also, he instructed them to bring more banknotes to the magnificent jewel hall, because Jun Sunshao suddenly discovered that in the last few lines of the auction list, there was an item, the Blazing Heart Meridian. Damn it, this was really wearing out iron shoes in fruitless search and finding it by chance without even looking for it. Jun Moxie excitedly cursed in his heart. Magnificent Jewel Hall. That was a place that was enough to make most of the nobles in Tianxiang go crazy. It was also a place where the high-level nobles would spend their money. That place was the largest auction house in Tianxiang Kingdom, but it was not just an auction house. In addition to some of the best treasures that could only be found by chance, but not by searching for them, everything that you could think of could be found here. As long as you had enough money. Money can enslave ghosts, but it can also be used to communicate with the gods. This famous saying, whether it was the previous life or this life, was very applicable. Food, drinks, toys, tools to kill, tools to rob, Xian beast hides, high-grade Xian cores, top-notch divine weapons, top-notch decorations, and even male and female slaves. It was really too much. There were only things that you could not think of, but there was nothing that you could not find. As long as you walked into the magnificent jewel hall, no matter how luxurious your life was, or how rich you were, you would find that you were still lacking in many things. It turned out that there were still many things that you had not tried. It turned out that your spiritual and material life was so barren. Therefore, unless you spent all the copper coins in your pocket, the average person would not be willing to come out. When he published this chapter, he felt some admiration in his heart, because as early as the first few chapters, a few of his friends had seen through it and left comments in the book review section. They pointed out that the 9-leaf grass had already been given to Jun Moxie by Fatty Tang. Feng Ling thought that he had concealed this information well, but he did not expect that so many people would see through it. It was really admirable. Therefore, he decided that for all his friends who had guessed it, Feng Ling would pout his stubbled mouth and give each of them a kiss. From time to time, he would turn his head and say a few words. When they were about to reach the magnificent jewel hall, Fatty Tang suddenly thought of something and touched his chin as he said, "Third young master, you say that the two of us are riding a horse and sitting in a sedan chair. Why do I feel like we are a bridegroom? Third young master, why don't you just submit to me? Scram. Go to hell, don't disgust me." Jun Moxie's stomach churned and he retched. With a schwa sound, he let down the curtain of the sedan chair, allowing this fellow to laugh exceptionally loudly outside. Dismounting at the entrance of the magnificent jewel hall, Tang Yuan's mount was already foaming at the mouth. In fact, Fatty Tang's mount was absolutely a first-class colt. However, the tonnage of Tang Dashao was just too much. The sickly-looking Jun Moxie had just gotten off the sedan chair when he sucked in a mouthful of cold air. This magnificent jewel hall is too big, right? This is the legendary auction house. Isn't it a little too outrageous? No matter which country it was, as long as it was in the capital of a country, apart from military camps, no one and no place dared to build a building larger than the imperial palace. This was a great taboo, and it was equivalent to treason. It was an unpardonable crime of plotting against the law, but the magnificent jewel hall dared to do so. In Jun Moxie's memory, the magnificent jewel hall in front of him was indeed bigger than the imperial palace. It was also a lot more magnificent and lively. However, regarding this point, the imperial family did not seem to care at all. Instead, they were somewhat proud of it. Just this point alone was enough to let Jun Moxie's imagination run wild. Jun Moxie thought in his heart, it seems that the imperial family of Tianxiang is aware of the background of the magnificent jewel hall. However, the magnificent jewel hall still gave face to the imperial family. Inside, the largest box was specially reserved for the imperial family. Regardless of whether anyone came or not, this box would always be empty. Several other countries also had their own boxes here, but they were relatively smaller. As for the major aristocratic families in Tianxiang City, they each had their own box. However, They had to pay a large sum of money for the box. No aristocratic family had ever been unhappy because of this special rule. On the contrary, the high-level boxes around the auction house, except for a few, were almost fixed because the rest of the seats were basically in the main hall. If the aristocratic family sat in the main hall, they would lose their status. Therefore, the box of the magnificent jewel hall had long been transformed into a special symbol of status. It was extremely rare to see a new noble join in. In addition, on the surface, the magnificent jewel hall seemed to be madly accumulating wealth. They were not interested in any political affairs and disputes and would never ask about it. However, if there were any fugitives or criminals who escaped into the magnificent jewel hall and thought that they could get protection, then they would be making a big mistake. The magnificent jewel hall would tie them up and bring them out in full force. This would instead save the officials and relevant personnel the time to hunt them down, regardless of whether the fault lies with the person or the original intention. Sneaking into the magnificent jewel hall with the intention of causing trouble was already the biggest sin. Jun Moxie squinted his eyes and looked at the wide gate of the magnificent jewel hall. Although Master Jun's son Xiao had never set foot here, he knew that the magnificent jewel hall held an auction almost every day. However, the real premium items were only auctioned once a month. And today, coincidentally, was the day of the auction. And the premium items auctions were always very lively. Another strange thing about the magnificent jewel hall was the items that were being auctioned. Almost no one knew the origin of the items, and no one had ever seen the magnificent jewel hall engage in any purchase or pawn business. All the items auctioned seemed to be produced by the magnificent jewel hall itself, which made it even more of a mystery. Fatty Tang seemed to have been here a few times as he turned around and called out to Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie hurriedly followed him, and the 8 guards who were following him left behind one to wait for the guard who went back to collect the banknotes while the other 7 entered in a line. Jun Moxie was walking when he suddenly frowned. This magnificent jewel hall was really not simple. From the moment he entered the door, there were 5 or 6 divine senses that swept over his body. Almost every 2 steps he took and every turn he took, he would be checked. This made Jun Moxie's heart very alert. According to his speculation, each of these people in the dark had a cultivation level no lower than the Jade Grade Shinshi, and this was only from the internal inspection of the magnificent jewel hall. Behind Jun Moxie, there were 2 groups of people. Each of them had a gloomy, murderous aura around them, the smell of the same kind. This was something that Jun Moxie was most familiar with, so naturally it was impossible for him to make a mistake. Moreover, these 2 groups of people were on guard against each other, as if they were on a battlefield. Therefore, Jun Moxie concluded that the 2 groups of people behind him were definitely not friends. They were in the same line of work as him, or at least they used to be in the same line of work. Walking further up the stairs, he reached the Tang family's box. As Jun Moxie walked up the stairs with one hand, he seemed to stagger and was unable to stand firm. Taking this opportunity to look back, he saw 6 men dressed in black walking towards the other side. 3 people in a group entered 2 boxes. One of the boxes had a curtain embroidered with a golden tulip. The other box had a black curtain embroidered with a white snow lotus. At this moment, the hall was already overcrowded with people, but each and every one of them were sitting in harmony. One by one, the waiters were carrying plates and methodically shuttled back and forth. Although there were many people, it was extremely quiet. After all, these people felt that they did not have the qualifications to behave atrociously in a magnificent jewel hall. Walking into the box, Jun Moxie squinted his eyes and looked at the box that belonged to the Jun family. On the snow-white curtain, there was a huge blood orchid in full bloom. He could not help but smile bitterly. Since the Jun family had booked this box, the Jun family had entered it less than 2 or 3 times. He did not know what his grandfather was thinking, but he had always paid a regular fee. Even now, he still kept it, which was really giving face to the magnificent jewel hall. Those 2 boxes, whose family do they belong to? Jun Moxie intentionally or unintentionally pointed to the box that the 2 groups of men in black had entered and asked, Today, my friend is getting married, so I went to help out early in the morning. It turns out that I should not have gone. When I went, there was a sea of people, red flags fluttering, and I became the focus of attention. When the old ladies saw me, they kindly smiled. When the girls saw me, their peach cheeks blushed and their eyes widened. When the young women saw me, cough, cough, let's not talk about it. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. This sentence is really true. When my fellow men see me, they all want to beat me up. When I stand there, I stand out like a crane in a flock of chickens, and no one has the courage to stand beside me. My elegant demeanor directly steals the limelight of the bride and groom. Well, the above paragraph, I did not say that I am very handsome. The heavens and the earth can testify. You are not allowed to attack me. Chapter 90. Those two boxes, whose do they belong to? June Moxie intentionally or unintentionally pointed to the boxes that the two groups of black-robed men had entered and asked, "Eldest brother, did you have a fever and become muddled? Or did water enter your brain?" Tang Yuan stared at him and said, "Those are the boxes of the second and third princes, and the one next to them belongs to the first prince. The boxes of the three princes are connected, and you don't even know this?" I haven't come in. What did you just say?" June Moxie rolled his eyes and glared at him. Tang Yuan thought for a while, and then remembered that he had never seen this man in front of him in the magnificent jewel hall. Recently, he had been indebted to this man several times. Moreover, what he had said just now was indeed not true. He could not help but grin and pat his fat face. "It's just that I've had a fever and become muddle-headed. My brain must have been flooded with water." June Moxie glared at him and knew that this guy was a troublemaker. He simply closed his eyes and ignored him, but his mind was spinning. The boxes of the two princes had actually been infiltrated by two groups of assassins. This is really a little strange. Could it be related to the assassination a few days ago? If that's the case, I'll have to settle this score. After all, I've been stabbed and kicked twice and haven't paid back yet. I've lived 2 lives and have never suffered such a huge loss. But which prince did the assassination a few days ago? What if I wrongly accused a good person? But it doesn't matter, they are brothers. If I am wrongly accused, then I am wrongly accused. Third young master, Li Feng and Meng Haizhou are also here. They're in the Meng family's box next to ours. Tang Yuan whispered and gnashed his teeth. "These bastards, sooner or later, I will teach them a lesson." Fatty Tang had hated them to the core ever since he found out that they were the ones who had set up a trap for him. They had almost caused him to lose his fiancée. However, the capital was currently in a troubled state. Grandpa Tang had warned everyone in the family not to provoke trouble. He had especially warned his precious grandson, who was the most troublemaker of them all. "Oh, next door? It's so close." Jun Mo Xie smiled mischievously. Then he rolled his eyes. "Fatty, I'll let you vent your anger if you agree to one of my conditions today. How about it? We're brothers, so there's nothing that can't be said. As long as I can vent my anger, I'll agree to any condition." Tang Yuan suddenly became spirited. "In today's auction, I have a few things that I must get, but I don't want others to know that I have them." Jun Mo Xie straightforwardly said, "I'll pay the money, and you help me call out the price. You just need to get it for me. As long as you do it, I'll make sure those few people suffer a terrible defeat under your hands today. I'll toy with those few brats to death." "What are you talking about?" Tang Yuan was displeased. "Whatever you want, I'll just buy it and give it to you. Who do you think we are? Is there a need to be so serious? You have tainted our brotherhood for no reason. I never take advantage of others, but I also never let others take advantage of me." Jun Moxie snorted. "I never take advantage of others, but I also never let others take advantage of me." Jun Mo Xie snorted. This sentence was the best portrayal of his past and present lives. "As long as I can punish those bastards, I will do anything you want." Jun Moxie smiled and calmed his mind. His divine sense spread out like quicksilver. Jun Mo Xie smiled faintly and calmed his mind. Then his spirit sense spread out like quicksilver. with the art of unlocking heaven's fortune's divine sense. Not a single movement could escape his notice. Although he could not see it with his own eyes, it was more effective than seeing it with his own eyes. Even though he could not see it with his own eyes, it was more effective than seeing it with his own eyes. After a while, the already abnormally quiet hall became even quieter. The curtain on the stage was slowly pulled open, revealing a multicolored high platform. The side facing the hall was actually a whole piece of purple sandstone. It was inlaid with thousands of precious gems of different colors. Under the illumination of the lights, the gems shone brightly. It made people feel as if they were immersed in a dream. It was as if the stars in the sky had suddenly gathered here. It was extremely beautiful. A purple-robed old man stood in front of the table on the stage. A silver-robed young lady was holding a tray in her hands. She stood behind him. The color of their clothes would have been a little dazzling if they had worn it normally. Most people would have scolded them for being crazy. However, at this moment, under the illumination of the multicolored gems on the stage, they looked like celestial beings. After exchanging a few pleasantries, the purple-robed old man did not beat around the bush. He immediately got to the point. This was the experience of an experienced auctioneer. No one was interested in listening to his words of welcome and gratitude. Saying welcome for a lifetime was not as good as smashing the hammer in his hand. Everyone understood this principle. The first auction item is 6 consecutive items were auctioned. Although each of them could be regarded as rare treasures, most of them were decorative items. Regarding these things, Jun Moxie was naturally not interested. Next to them, Meng Haizhou and the 2 princes' private rooms did not have any movement. These items all ended up in the hands of some of the wealthy merchants in the hall. But as the prices rose higher and higher, it made Jun Moxie a little irritated. Although the Blazing Heart Meridian was rare, it was only a medicinal herb. Moreover, its effect was very unorthodox. In this world, it could not really squeeze into the ranks of high-quality medicinal herbs. But if this trend continued, when it came to the Blazing Heart Meridian's turn, he was afraid that the price would be sky-high. How could it be like this? Was there something fishy going on? Jun Moxie frowned as he looked at the millions of silver notes brought back by the guards. Suddenly, his spirit sense, which had been spreading between the 2 princes and the room next door, suddenly fluctuated. Jun Mo Xie opened his eyes and looked at Tang Yuan. They're about to move. It seems that Meng Haizhou and the others want the next item. In fact, they're quite concerned about it. The hitman Jun could clearly feel that the fluctuations were coming from Li Jun and Meng Haizhou's private rooms. There was a faint feeling of excitement in the air. It seemed that they had been looking forward to the next item for a long time. The next item, I believe that everyone has heard of it, is the seabed jade coral. Everyone has seen the purple coral and all kinds of corals, so they're not rare. But this seabed jade coral is the first time that it has appeared in the magnificent jewel hall. I believe that in the entire continent, there are only a few people who have seen this type of seabed jade coral. At least until today, this old man has never seen it. The purple-robed old man smiled as the white-robed girl behind him worked together to lift up an item covered with red silk and gently put it down. Fatty, this is what they want. As soon as the starting price is set, immediately raise the price. Don't give them the opportunity to bid first. Jun Moxie smiled and warned. He had clearly sensed that the appearance of the seabed jade coral had caused the hearts of the people in the room to beat fiercely. Combined with the previous fluctuations, he was certain that this seabed jade coral was something that they were determined to obtain. With such a good opportunity, how could they not stir up trouble? Are you sure? This thing, if we were to win it, it would at most be a decoration. Tang Yuan's eyes widened. I am sure. Jun Moxie nodded affirmatively. Don't worry. Tang Yuan gritted his teeth and said, good. Out of trust in Jun Moxie, Tang Yuan did not even think about it and directly chose to believe him. As soon as the red silk was lifted, a snow-white coral appeared before everyone's eyes. It emitted a sparkling and translucent luster, yet it was exceptionally soft and exquisite. The entire coral was 3 feet wide and 4 feet tall. Such a large item. Even an ordinary coral would be worth a lot of silver, not to mention the rare seabed jade coral. Seabed jade coral, 2 feet 85 feet wide, 3 feet 9 feet tall, 1 foot thick. Contains the energy of heaven and earth. Placed at home, it is greatly beneficial to the cultivation of a profound practitioner, can stabilize the mind, and will not be afraid of inner demons. The starting price is 100,000 silver taels. Each bid must not be lower than 10,000 silver taels. As soon as the purple-robed old man's voice fell, a voice that sounded like a broken gong immediately rang out. This young master bids 1,000,000 silver taels. It was Master Tang Yuan, Tang Da Xiao. In a split second, the whole place was silent. Hundreds of pairs of eyes shot over at the same time. Tang Yuan tried his best to stick out his big belly, looking around proudly. Are you kidding? The starting price is only 100,000 silver taels, and your first bid is 1,000,000 silver taels? How are you going to bid then? Even if you were determined to get it, you shouldn't be this prodigal. If you were to raise the price slowly, it would probably be around 500,000 silver taels at most. But this guy actually directly bid 1,000,000 silver taels on his first bid. This guy is crazy. Everyone looked at Fatty with contempt. The monthly ticket for the first month of May has doubled. Hee. Feng Ling is ready. Brothers and sisters, are you ready? The big battle is about to begin. Chapter 91. In the next room, Meng Haizhou and Li Jun were so angry that their noses were crooked and their small faces turned green. Although 1,000,000 taels of silver was not a small amount for them, it was not a large amount, and they could still afford it. However, in the last battle at the 1,000 Gold Hall, they had lost so much money that they almost had to take off their pants. Now, they really did not have much money, and this jade coral was something that they had to obtain on this trip. 3 days before each auction, the magnificent Jewel Hall would routinely send a list of the items to be auctioned to the major families of the Tianxiang city. When Li Yuran saw the name of the jade coral, he immediately issued an order: get this jade coral at all costs. In fact, the Jun family also had this list, but the Jun family never participated in these kinds of events. Over time, the list stopped at the Jun family's gatehouse. Therefore, Jun Moxie did not know about this matter. Moreover, Jun Wui's collection of herbs was extremely secretive, and only a few people in the Jun family knew about it. If he did not go to find Tang Yuan, he was afraid that he would have missed out on the Blazing Heart Meridian. For other Xian cultivators, this jade coral, although precious, was only an auxiliary thing for cultivation. But for the Grand Preceptor Li Shang, who had his Xian Qi crippled, it was a treasure that could prolong his life. There was even hope for him to cultivate again, because Li Yuran had learned from a reliable source that if this jade coral used a special method to absorb the qi of heaven and earth, it could even help the Grand Preceptor Li, who had his Xian Qi crippled, to reconnect his broken meridians. And this effect was known by very few people. Li Yuran had been secretly searching for a long time, but had never found a trace of the jade coral. If the Grand Preceptor Li's body could last for a few more years, or even decades, how useful would it be for the Li family? So this jade coral was just a mysterious decoration for other families, but for the Li family, it was related to the future of the entire family. Now that this thing had suddenly appeared, it was undoubtedly a windfall for the Li family. Therefore, the Li family was determined to get the jade coral. Li Yuran also gave Meng Haizhou and Li Jun a death order. If it weren't for the consideration that Li Yuran's presence would be too big of a target and that she might be hindered by others, perhaps Li Yuran would already be sitting here. Meng and Li had come together, intending to use the prestige of their two great clans to call out a higher price as soon as possible. This way, they would be able to scare off other buyers and buy this treasure. For this matter, the two brats had already made ample preparations. Who would have thought that such an annoying big fatty would pop out at this critical juncture, and an old enemy at that? Not only that, but Jun Moxie, who had an extremely powerful spiritual force, had already sensed their intentions. However, this was something they didn't know. Even the experienced auctioneer on the stage was shocked by Tang Yuan's sudden shout. After a long time, an angry voice came from the private room next door. I bid 1,200,000 taels. Li Jun and Meng Haizhou had no choice but to bite the bullet and bid. However, the two of them had brought enough money, and this 1,200,000 taels was still within their budget. As for the sudden increase of 200,000 taels, it was to scare off Fatty Tang. Unexpectedly, before the voice could even finish, Tang Yuan had already shouted at the top of his lungs, "You're trying to scare me. 2,000,000 taels." Fatty shouted to his heart's content. This kind of empty talk to raise the price did not require him to actually pay up. Especially when he could make those annoying fellows bleed, it was truly satisfying. Li Jun and Meng Haizhou in the room next door almost vomited blood. This time, Li Yuran had only allocated a total of 2,000,000 taels. At that time, the two of them felt that they had gotten a great bargain. After all, although the jade coral was rare, the base price was only 100,000 taels. At most, 400,000 to 500,000 taels of silver was the limit, and 2,000,000 taels of silver was definitely more than enough. The two of them were even considering how to hide a sum of money and put it into their own pockets to compensate for their previous losses. But who would have thought that Fatty Tang would stir things up? He had only called out the price once, but the price had already risen to the peak. If they continued bidding, they would have to pay for the rest of the money themselves. As for going back to ask Li Yuran for reimbursement, this idea had never even crossed their minds. 2,400,000 taels. This was Li Jun's voice. It was obvious that this young master of the Grand Preceptor's residence was already bristling with anger. His face turned from green to blue, and even showed signs of turning purple. "Tang Yuan, do you really want this jade coral that much? This thing is useless to you." "Bullshit. How do you know that this thing is useless to me? If it's useless to me, why should I waste my breath on you? Do you think that you're handsome?" Tang Yuan snorted and stamped his feet. The fat on his body trembled violently, and even the room shook twice. He shouted, 3,000,000 taels. The sound of the person next door panting could actually be heard even in this well-soundproofed room. Meng Haizhou's voice was obviously stuttering. 3,500,000 taels. It was unknown whether he was angry or something else. As soon as he shouted, he immediately jumped out of the room and came to the door of the Tang family's room. With a twisted face, he said, "Fatty Tang, you've already asked for 2,000,000 taels of silver from my family for that matter. That's far more than what you've lost. What more do you want? You must know that you can't be too ruthless. Always leave some leeway so that we can meet again in the future." The two of you are really too strange. Tang Yuan was the first to call out a price of 1,000,000 taels, and no one fought over it. It was obvious that you had already succeeded. It was obvious that you were deliberately going against Tang Yuan to raise the price. Everyone can see that your intentions are malicious. How did it become Tang Yuan's fault now? Before Tang Yuan could open his mouth, Jun Moxie had already shouted in astonishment, "Are your Li and Meng families being reasonable?" As soon as he opened his mouth, a young girl's voice suddenly sounded from the Tianxiang Imperial Room. "It's Jun Moxie." It was Dugu Xiaoyi's voice. Her voice was full of joy, and relief. "Jun Moxie, this has nothing to do with you. Don't meddle in other people's business." Meng Haizhou's face was ashen. Last time, it was this fellow who ruined his plans. After that, he was severely punished by his family. Not only did he end up going for wool and coming home shorn, he was also blackmailed by Tang Yuan for 2,000,000 taels of silver. Even now, his injuries had not healed. Now that he saw the two of them together, he was truly furious. "My business is third young master's business. Less nonsense. If you want the item, then take out the money. If you don't have money, then get lost." Tang Yuan puffed out his belly and shouted, "This young master offers 4,000,000 taels. You dare to compete with me? I don't have anything else, but I have money. Let me tell you, I have too much money to burn. What about it?" Right now, everyone could see that on one side was the Meng and Li families, and on the other side was the Jun and Tang family. This was clearly a fight between the young masters of these four families. Everyone tactfully shut their mouths. After Grandpa June's bloodbath in the capital, the blood on the streets had yet to dry. Who would have the guts to jump out and get stabbed? Meng Haizhou fiercely cursed. He was so angry that his entire body was trembling as he stood outside the box. He really wanted to fling his sleeves and leave, but in the end he did not dare to go against Liu Ran's instructions. He could only grit his teeth and swallow his blood. He said hatefully, "I bid 5 million. 5 million taels of silver. Tang Yuan, if you have the guts, raise it again." Jun Moxie narrowed his eyes slightly, using his divine sense to probe Meng Haizhou's agitated emotions. Seeing that he was close to the point of hysteria, he knew that this was the highest amount that Meng Haizhou and Li Zhen could come up with. If Tang Yuan were to continue shouting, he was afraid that he would really end up smashing it in his own hands. Jun Moxie gave Tang Yuan a look. Tang Yuan understood and laughed. The Meng family is indeed rich. 5 million taels of silver. Using 10 times the price to buy a jade coral that is only worth 500,000 taels of silver. Admirable. This young master doesn't have enough money. I'll let you have it this time. As he said that, he moved closer to Meng Haizhou and whispered mysteriously, "Surname Meng, I actually didn't bring any money today. I was just shouting for fun." Meng Haizhou's eyes widened and his face turned pale. His finger trembled as he pointed at Tang Yuan. After a long time, he spat out a mouthful of blood. He fell on his back. "You're too weak. I was just joking. How could you really not bring any money?" Jun Moxie shook his head and watched as Meng Haizhou fell heavily on the ground. He said with disdain, "You can't even take a sentence like that. How despicable. I've received notice that this book will go on sale on the 1st of May, which is the day after tomorrow, at midnight on Saturday. Therefore, brothers and sisters of the evil monarch, please reserve your monthly tickets. Don't waste it during the double period. Feng Ling will also repay his brothers and sisters with a burst of strength. Thank you in advance. Let's fight side by side." I looked in the mirror and smiled without saying a word. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.